When the Mafia Queen finally speaks, empires fall. Damian Rivas thought his pregnant wife was decorative, silent, compliant, invisible. But the night he came home reeking of betrayal, he found Elena sitting behind his desk, holding documents that could destroy him. She hadn't been quiet. She'd been watching, mapping every secret, building leverage while he built enemies. Now the invisible wife has become his greatest threat, or his only salvation. Will love survive when the silent queen finally moves her pieces? Stay until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. Let's begin. The city never truly slept. It pulsed with a rhythm Damian Rivas had spent 20 years learning to control. The flow of money through legitimate businesses that masked darker currents. The movement of information that could build empires or bury bodies. The careful dance between power and the illusion of civility that separated men like him from common criminals. At 43, Damian had perfected the art of dominance. His empire stretched across shipping, construction, and entertainment. Legitimate on paper, profitable in ways that would never appear in tax filings. The Rivas name commanded respect in boardrooms and fear in back alleys. Politicians returned his calls, judges remembered favors, rivals learned to negotiate or disappear. Control was his greatest weapon. Control of his business operations, his territorial agreements, his carefully cultivated reputation as a man who rewarded loyalty and punished betrayal with equal precision. He controlled the commission meetings where the city's most powerful families divided influence like kings carving up conquered lands. He controlled the flow of information, ensuring nothing reached his enemies before he decided what they should know. And he had believed, with the certainty of a man who had never been proven wrong, that he controlled his home. The estate sat on 12 acres in the most exclusive enclave outside the city, far enough from the streets where his real business happened, close enough that he could reach any crisis within 20 minutes. The house itself was a statement. Mediterranean architecture with modern security, walls that looked decorative but could withstand small arms fire, windows that appeared welcoming but were bulletproof. Every entrance was monitored, every staff member vetted through 3 layers of background investigation. It was a fortress dressed as a home, which was precisely how Damian preferred it. He had purchased it 6 years ago, shortly before marrying Elena Castellano, in a union that united 2 old families and strengthened his position on the commission. The Castellanos had been one of the original 5 families before her father's death. Their influence diminished, but their connection still valuable. The marriage had been strategic, beneficial to both sides. Elena brought legitimacy, old money respectability, ties to families who remembered when the Rivases were nobody. In return, she received protection, security, the kind of life her family could no longer provide after her father's empire crumbled. It had seemed like a fair exchange. She was beautiful in that understated way Damian preferred, dark hair usually pulled back simply, brown eyes that seemed to observe more than participate, delicate features that looked good in photographs but didn't demand constant attention. She dressed elegantly but not ostentatiously, spoke when appropriate but never dominated conversation, attended the events his position required without complaint. The perfect mafia wife, decorative, compliant, invisible when he needed privacy, present when he needed the appearance of family. She had never given him trouble, never questioned his absences or his business, never demanded explanations or made scenes. After 6 years of marriage, Damian had stopped really seeing her as a separate person with her own thoughts. She had become simply part of the household infrastructure, as reliable and unremarkable as the security system. When she told him 3 months ago that she was pregnant, he had accepted the news with the same detached approval he might show for a successful business acquisition. An heir would be useful eventually. It would satisfy his mother, who had been pressuring him about legacy for years. It would present a more stable image to his business associates. He had patted Elena's hand, told her to take care of herself, and returned to more important matters. That had been his first mistake. His second was underestimating how much a silent woman sees. The night everything changed began like any other Thursday. Damian attended a meeting at one of his legitimate restaurants, construction contracts that needed finalizing, shipment schedules that required his personal approval, territorial negotiations with the Korsakov family about their expanding interests in the port district, business that required his attention, his presence, his authority. The meeting ran late, which was normal. Afterward, drinks with Viktor Korsakov to cement their agreement, which was customary. Then Natasha Volkov appeared, Viktor's cousin, recently arrived from Moscow, stunning in the way that demanded attention. Dark red dress, knowing smile, eyes that promised things Damien's quiet wife had never offered. She was good. He would realize that later. Professionally good. Every gesture calculated, every word designed to appeal to a powerful man's vanity. She laughed at his observations, touched his arm at precisely the right moments, looked at him like he was the most fascinating person in the room. When Viktor conveniently excused himself for a phone call, Natasha suggested they continue the conversation somewhere more private. Damien wasn't stupid. He knew what she was offering, knew the risks of mixing business with pleasure, knew that complications with associates' family members could create problems. But control meant taking what he wanted, didn't it? And he wanted the distraction she represented, something exciting, dangerous, different from the quiet domesticity waiting at home. They went to the penthouse suite he kept downtown for exactly these purposes. She poured expensive vodka, asked intelligent questions about his business empire, managed to seem both impressed and intellectually engaged. When she kissed him, it felt like victory. Another conquest, another demonstration that he could have whatever he desired. They didn't sleep together. Not quite. He was too experienced for that level of recklessness on a first encounter. But there was enough intimacy that her perfume clung to his clothes. Her lipstick left traces on his collar. The scent of her hair transferred to his jacket when she leaned against him. Evidence. Though at the time he didn't think it mattered, Elena wouldn't notice. She never did. He arrived home just after 2 a.m, expecting darkness and silence. The staff would be asleep in their quarters. Elena would be in their bedroom, probably already sleeping. She tired easily now with the pregnancy, often retiring by 10. The house would be still and quiet, and he would pour himself a final drink in his study before bed, satisfied with a productive evening. Instead, every light on the first floor was blazing. Damien frowned as he entered through the private entrance that led to his study. His head of security, Marcus, was supposed to monitor these things. Lights left on meant wasted electricity, and more importantly, indicated that household protocols weren't being followed. He made a mental note to address it in the morning as he walked down the hallway toward his study, already mentally reviewing his schedule for the next day. Another commission meeting, a call with his accountants about the new casino project, maybe lunch with... He stopped in the doorway of his study. Elena was sitting behind his desk, not in one of the visitor chairs where she might occasionally sit while he worked, making small talk about dinner parties or charity events. Behind his desk, in his chair, the leather executive chair that cost more than most people's cars, positioned at the center of command in his private domain. She wore a simple black dress, her dark hair loose around her shoulders in a way he couldn't remember seeing before. Her hands were folded calmly on the desk surface. In front of her sat a stack of manila folders and a crystal tumbler filled with what looked like his private reserve whiskey. "You're awake," he said, his tone carrying just enough edge to remind her that this was irregular. Wives didn't wait up like this. They didn't sit in his private space uninvited. "I've been expecting you." Elena's voice was steady, conversational, as if they were discussing the weather. "We need to talk." Something in her tone made him pause. In 6 years of marriage, Elena had never said those words. She didn't demand conversations. She accepted his schedule, his priorities, his time when he chose to give it. Damien stepped fully into the room, closing the door behind him. "It's late, Elena. Whatever this is about can wait until morning." "No," she said simply. "It can't." The contradiction was so unexpected that he actually looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time in months. Her face was calm, almost serene. No tears, no trembling, no signs of the emotional breakdown he might have expected if she'd somehow learned about Natasha. Instead, she looked powerful, like she belonged in that chair. "You smell like expensive perfume," Elena observed, her tone still conversational. "Chanel No. 5, unless I'm mistaken. You've never bought me Chanel. I wear Dior." She paused, taking a small sip of the whiskey. "You also have lipstick on your collar. A shade called Moscow Nights, if the color is accurate. Not sold in this country. Imported exclusively through certain Russian channels." Damien felt the first stirring of something that wasn't quite concern yet, but wasn't comfort either. "Elena, Please sit. She gestured to one of the visitor chairs facing the desk. We have a great deal to discuss, and you'll want to be comfortable. He didn't sit. He stepped closer to the desk instead, letting his physical presence remind her who held power in this room. I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to stop. Now, this is my study, my desk, your empire, Elena finished for him. She opened the first folder, turning it so he could see the contents. Built on shipping contracts that move more than legal cargo. Construction permits that somehow bypass environmental regulations. Entertainment venues that launder money through inflated ticket sales and rigged gambling operations. Damien's blood went cold. Those documents shouldn't exist outside his most secure safe, the kind of safe only 3 people knew how to access: himself, his lawyer, and his accountant. Where did you get those? His voice dropped to the dangerous quiet that usually preceded violence. I've always had them, Elena said calmly. Among other things, did you know your accountant has a gambling problem? He visits the Sapphire Casino every Tuesday and Thursday, loses on average $15,000 a night. He's in debt to the Moretti family for close to $400,000. She opened another folder. Your lawyer has a mistress in the city. She's 19, works at the downtown Starbucks, thinks he's a venture capitalist. He pays her rent and tuition. His wife doesn't know. Neither does the bar association that granted him his license. Damien's hands curled into fists. What is this? Blackmail? Information, Elena corrected. The kind I've been collecting since before we married. My father taught me many things before he died, Damien. One of them was that invisible women see everything. She stood, moving around the desk with the careful grace of her pregnancy, carrying another folder. But we're not here to discuss your accountant or your lawyer. We're here to discuss Natasha Volkov. The name hung in the air between them. She arrived in the city 6 weeks ago, Elena continued, her voice still that same infuriating calm. Officially, she's Viktor Korsakov's cousin, here to explore business opportunities. Unofficially, she's an intelligence operative for the Solntsevskaya Bratva, the Russian mafia organization that's been trying to establish a foothold in this territory for the past 2 years. She opened the folder, revealing surveillance photos. Natasha meeting with known Russian operatives, financial transfers, communications intercepted and translated. Her assignment is simple, Elena said. Seduce you, gain your trust, learn your vulnerabilities, and then, when the moment is right, poison you with thallium, a slow-acting toxin that mimics natural illness. You would die over the course of weeks, appearing to succumb to a mysterious disease. No one would suspect murder. Damien stared at the photographs, his mind racing. This couldn't be real. Viktor Korsakov was his ally, his business partner in the port district. They just finalized an agreement tonight. Unless... Victor isn't her cousin, he said slowly. Victor is her handler, Elena confirmed. The agreement you signed tonight gives the Korsakov family access to warehouse space in the port. Warehouse space they'll use to import their own operations, gradually replacing your infrastructure with theirs. Within a year of your death, they would control 70% of your port operations. Within 2 years, everything you built would be theirs. She returned to the desk, opening yet another folder. I've been tracking the Korsakov family's expansion for 8 months. Every property acquisition, every personnel change, every contract that seemed too generous. They've been planning this for a long time, Damien, very carefully, very patiently. Damien finally sat down, his legs suddenly unsteady. Why are you telling me this? Elena met his eyes directly. Because despite everything, you're the father of my child, and because I'm tired of being invisible. She sat back down in his chair, a gesture that now seemed less like intrusion and more like claiming territory. I have something to show you, several things actually, but first I need you to understand that what I'm about to share changes everything between us. From the bottom drawer of the desk, she produced a laptop. His secure laptop, the one he used for encrypted communications with his most trusted associates. The one protected by biometric security that shouldn't allow anyone else access. Elena opened it with a thumbprint. His thumbprint. Somehow replicated, somehow bypassed. 12 offshore accounts, she said, turning the screen toward him, holding a combined total of $73 million in untraceable assets. As of this morning, those accounts have been transferred into an irrevocable trust. The beneficiary is our unborn child. The trustee is my father's former attorney, the one person in this city whose loyalty the commission trusts because he's survived 4 regime changes without ever choosing sides. Damien's mouth went dry. You can't. I already have. Elena pulled up another window. Your shell companies in the Cayman Islands, your real estate holdings in Panama, your investment portfolio in Luxembourg, all of it legally transferred. The documentation is perfect. You signed it yourself. She smiled slightly at his expression. Not really, of course, but the forgeries are excellent. My father taught me that too. He always said the best defense against powerful men was having leverage they couldn't destroy without destroying themselves. This is theft. Damien's voice shook with rage he was struggling to control. This is insurance, Elena interrupted. Because here's what's going to happen next, Damien. You're going to sit there and listen to everything I know about your empire, your enemies, and your allies. You're going to understand exactly how much I've seen while you thought I was invisible. And then you're going to make a choice. She leaned forward. You can try to fight me. Take this to court, to the commission, to whatever authority you think will side with you. But if you do, every piece of information in these folders becomes public. Your accountant's gambling debts, your lawyer's 19-year-old mistress, the real source of your construction permits, the identities of every judge and politician you've bought. Everything. Or, she continued, you can accept that your invisible wife has become your most valuable asset, because I didn't just steal your money, Damien. I protected it. The Korsakovs can't access what they can't find. Their plan to dismantle your empire fails if your assets are secured before you die. Damien tried to process what he was hearing. You're saying you're protecting me? I'm saying I'm protecting our child's inheritance, Elena corrected, which requires keeping you alive and in power, at least until we resolve this particular threat. She closed the laptop. But I'm also saying that things change between us starting now. I'm not decorative anymore. I'm not compliant. I'm not invisible. I am your partner in this empire, whether you like it or not, because I have information you need, resources you didn't know existed, and leverage over people you trust. You're blackmailing me, Damien said flatly. I'm negotiating, Elena replied. There's a difference. Blackmail is one-sided. This is an offer of alliance. You give me equal standing in your organization. You consult me on major decisions. You acknowledge publicly that I'm not just your wife, but your partner. In return, I help you survive the Korsakov takeover attempt and strengthen your position on the commission. She stood again, carrying the folders to the front of the desk. You have until tomorrow night to decide. The commission gala is in 48 hours. Natasha will be there. Victor is bringing her as his guest. She'll make her move soon, either at the gala or shortly after. You need to be ready. And if I refuse? Damien asked. Elena smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of someone holding all the cards and knowing it. Then you'll wake up one morning very sick, and I'll be a very wealthy widow raising our child on the fortune you thought you controlled. She walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Damien? I'm keeping this study. Consider the master bedroom yours alone from now on. I've moved my things to the east wing. We'll maintain appearances in public, but privately, we're establishing new boundaries. You can't just... I already did. She opened the door. Sleep well. We have a lot to plan tomorrow. Then she was gone, leaving him alone in his study that no longer felt like his, staring at folders full of information his silent wife had collected while he thought she noticed nothing. Damien sat in the visitor chair for a long time after she left, his mind spinning through scenarios and calculations. His first instinct was to call his security, have her detained, seize the documents, reassert control through force. But even as he reached for his phone, he knew it wouldn't work. She'd been too careful, too thorough. She said the trust documents were already filed, which meant they were beyond his reach. And if she really had dirt on his accountant and lawyer, if she really had intercepted his encrypted communications, how long had she been planning this? And what else did she know that she hadn't revealed yet? He thought about Natasha, about the evening he'd just spent with her. Every moment replayed in his mind with new context. Her questions that seemed flattering but were actually intelligence gathering. Her touches that felt like attraction but were probably manipulation. The way Victor had conveniently left them alone. Had he really been that obvious? That easy? The thought burned. Damian Rivas wasn't a man who got played. He was the one who orchestrated, who controlled, who saw 3 moves ahead. Yet apparently his own wife had been watching him for years, building leverage, preparing for this exact moment. And he'd noticed nothing. He looked at the folders spread across his desk. Elena had left them there, deliberately. A demonstration. These were just samples of what she had collected. The real question was how much more information existed that she hadn't shown him. Slowly, Damian reached for the first folder. If he was going to make a decision by tomorrow night, he needed to understand exactly what his invisible wife had become. The night stretched on as he read. Financial records that shouldn't exist, surveillance reports on people he thought were loyal, transaction records that revealed patterns he'd missed, conversation transcripts from meetings he'd thought were private. It was comprehensive, devastating, professional. This wasn't the work of an angry spouse looking for leverage in a divorce. This was the work of someone who understood power at a fundamental level, someone who had been trained. Of course, her father. Damian remembered Marco Castellano now with new understanding. The man had ruled the commission before Damian's time, had built an empire based on information rather than violence. He'd been known for knowing everyone's secrets, for having leverage over every rival, for surviving assassination attempts by staying 3 steps ahead. And he'd had 6 years with his daughter before his death. 6 years to teach her everything he knew. Elena hadn't been learning to be a mafia wife during those years. She'd been learning to be a mafia queen. And Damian had married her without understanding what he was bringing into his home. The irony was almost funny. He'd thought the marriage gave him legitimacy, connections, respectability. Instead, he'd married a woman who had been watching him since before the wedding, collecting information, waiting for the right moment to reveal her true nature. Dawn was breaking when he finally finished reading the last folder. Outside, he could hear the first sounds of the household waking, staff beginning their morning routines, security changing shifts, the gardeners starting their work. Normal life continuing while his entire understanding of his world shifted. Damian looked at the crystal tumbler Elena had been drinking from, still half full of his private reserve whiskey, still sitting on his desk like a territorial marker. She'd been right about one thing. Everything had changed. The question was what he would do about it. He could try to reassert control through force. He had resources, connections, power. But Elena had proven she understood those resources better than he did. She'd infiltrated his most secure systems, compromised his most trusted people, moved his assets without him noticing. Fighting her would be fighting someone who knew all his vulnerabilities while he was still discovering hers. Or he could accept her offer, acknowledge her as a partner, give her the power she was demanding in exchange for her knowledge and protection. The thought grated against everything Damian believed about control and dominance. Partners meant compromise. Equals meant shared authority. It meant admitting that his silent wife had outmaneuvered him. But it also meant surviving the Korsakov threat. It meant having access to information he clearly needed. It meant having an ally who had already proven she could operate at the highest levels of the game. His phone buzzed. A message from Viktor Korsakov. Enjoyed last night. Natasha was very impressed. Looking forward to the gala. Our future is bright, my friend. Damian stared at the message. Our future. Victor's future, built on Damian's corpse. Elena had saved his life by revealing the plot. Whether out of genuine concern or purely for practical reasons, didn't change that fact. He poured himself a drink from the decanter on his desk, then poured a second glass, carried both toward the door, walked through the quiet house to the east wing, Elena's new quarters. He knocked, waited. She answered after a moment, wearing a silk robe, her hair still loose. She looked tired but alert, like she'd been expecting him. Damian offered her one of the glasses. We need to talk, he said. About the gala, about Natasha, about the commission, about everything. Elena took the glass, studied his face for a long moment, then stepped aside to let him enter. Yes, she said quietly. We do. As the sun rose over the estate, illuminating the grounds in golden light, Damian Rivas began the process of learning who his wife really was, and understanding that the woman he'd thought was invisible had been the most dangerous person in his house all along. Elena's sitting room in the east wing was smaller than the master suite but carefully appointed. Antique furniture that had belonged to her mother, bookshelves lined with volumes in multiple languages, a desk positioned near the window with a view of the gardens. It was the first time Damien had been in this room since the renovation 6 years ago. And he realized with uncomfortable clarity that he'd never bothered to learn what his wife did with her private space. She settled into one of the armchairs, cradling the whiskey glass against her chest, her other hand resting protectively over the curve of her pregnancy. The morning light caught the exhaustion in her face, dark circles under her eyes, a tightness around her mouth that suggested she hadn't slept either. "How long?" Damien asked, remaining standing. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since before we married," Elena said simply. "My father warned me that the Rivas family was ambitious, dangerous, and that you specifically were someone who controlled everything around you. He told me that if I married you, I would need insurance." She took a small sip of whiskey. "So he taught me how to build networks without being noticed, how to collect information without leaving traces, how to move money through systems designed to be impenetrable. He spent the last year of his life preparing me for this world, Damien, not as a victim in it, but as a player. You've been spying on me from the beginning." It wasn't a question. "I've been protecting myself from the beginning," Elena corrected. "There's a difference. I didn't know if you would be the kind of husband who respected boundaries or the kind who saw wives as property. I needed to be ready for either possibility." Damien felt anger rising again, hot and bitter. "So our entire marriage has been a lie?" "Our entire marriage has been exactly what you wanted it to be," Elena said, her voice sharpening. "You wanted someone decorative who didn't ask questions, someone who looked good at events and stayed out of your business, someone who gave you the legitimacy of the Castellano name without demanding anything in return. I gave you exactly that." She stood, moving to the window. "The lie was thinking that's all I was capable of being, that because I was quiet, I was empty, that because I didn't challenge you, I didn't see you clearly. You let me believe us. I let you believe what you wanted to believe," Elena interrupted, turning to face him. "You never asked what I thought about anything that mattered. You never asked about my day, my interests, my opinions on your business decisions. You saw what you expected to see. A pretty face and an old family name. The rest was invisible to you." The words hit harder than Damien wanted to admit. He thought back over 6 years of marriage, trying to remember meaningful conversations with his wife. Dinners where he'd talked about his day while she listened. Events where she'd smiled and made small talk with other wives while he conducted real business. Mornings when he'd left early and returned late, assuming she filled her time with whatever wives did. He'd never asked. He'd never cared to know. "The gala," he said, forcing his mind back to immediate threats. "Tell me about your plan." Elena moved to her desk, opening a drawer and pulling out a tablet. "The commission gala happens in 2 nights at the Grandview Hotel. 12 families will attend, plus their key associates and guests. It's neutral territory. No violence allowed, no open conflicts. Everyone on their best behavior." She pulled up a floor plan of the hotel's grand ballroom. "Victor will bring Natasha as his guest. She'll work the room, establishing herself as his cousin interested in business opportunities. She'll make contact with you, probably suggesting a private meeting to discuss investment possibilities. That's when she'll make her move." Damien studied the floor plan. "You're certain about the poison?" "Thallium is the Bratva's signature for high-value targets," Elena said. "Colorless, odorless, easily administered in food or drink. The symptoms mimic natural illness: nausea, confusion, hair loss, organ failure. By the time doctors identify it, the damage is usually irreversible." She met his eyes. "You would have 3, maybe 4 weeks. You'd deteriorate gradually. Your empire would fall into chaos as you became unable to lead, and Victor would be there to steady everything, to guide the transition, to ensure business continuity. While stealing everything I built." "While taking everything you built," Elena agreed. "The commission would see it as succession, not theft. A tragedy, but a necessary transition. By the time anyone questioned the speed of the Korsakov expansion, it would be too late to stop it." Damien felt cold rage settling into his chest. Victor had smiled at him tonight, poured drinks, talked about their bright future together, all while planning murder. "So we expose him," Damien said. "We bring evidence to the commission, show them what the Korsakovs are planning. With what proof?" Elena challenged. "Intercepted communications that reveal I've been monitoring Russian intelligence networks?" Financial analysis that shows I have access to systems I shouldn't be able to touch? Surveillance photos that demonstrate I've been tracking Victor's operations without commission approval? She shook her head. Everything I know about the Korsakov plot is information I obtained through methods that would raise questions about me, about what I'm capable of, about what I've been doing for 6 years while everyone thought I was decorative. Damien understood the problem. The commission operated on codes of conduct that maintained order. Wives didn't spy on their husbands. Families didn't surveil other families without permission. Information gathering was supposed to go through official channels or be kept private. Elena revealing what she knew would expose not just the Korsakov conspiracy, but her own capabilities. And in their world, capable women were dangerous, unpredictable, threats to the traditional order that kept the commission stable. Then what do you suggest? He asked. Elena smiled slightly. We let Natasha make her move, but we control the circumstances. Make it public enough that the commission sees it happen, contained enough that you're protected, dramatic enough that the Korsakovs can't deny their involvement. She pulled up another document on the tablet. Victor's timeline has weaknesses. He needs you dead, but not immediately. The transition has to look natural. That gives us a window to maneuver. And Natasha is confident, probably overconfident. She thinks you're an easy mark, that one seduction is all it takes. Because I fell for it tonight, Damien said bitterly. Because powerful men always fall for it, Elena corrected. Beautiful woman, flattering attention, the thrill of something forbidden. It's not personal, Damien. It's a proven strategy. She set down the tablet. But now you know what she is, which means you can play the role she expects while we prepare the trap. She thinks she's hunting you. We're going to make her the prey instead. Damien considered the approach. It had merit, using the enemy's confidence against them, letting them commit to the plan while building countermeasures. But it required trust between him and Elena, coordination, shared risk, partnership. If we do this, he said carefully, if I accept your offer of alliance, what exactly are you expecting in return? Elena met his gaze steadily. Public acknowledgement that I'm more than decorative. You introduce me to your key associates, include me in strategic discussions, consult me before major decisions. The empire becomes our empire, not just yours with me as window dressing. And privately we establish boundaries, Elena said. Separate quarters, separate lives outside of business. We present as a united couple in public, but we're not playing house anymore. This is a professional partnership, not a romantic marriage. We have a child coming, Damien pointed out. Which we'll raise together, Elena agreed, as partners, co-parents, but not as the traditional husband and wife you imagined when we married. Those roles are over. The terms were clear. Harsh, but clear. Elena was offering him survival and success in exchange for equality and independence. It meant giving up control, accepting that his silent wife had become someone who could stand beside him rather than behind him. It also meant admitting that he needed her, that his empire had vulnerabilities he hadn't seen, threats he hadn't anticipated, weaknesses she had identified while he'd been too arrogant to notice. Pride demanded he reject the offer, find another way, reassert dominance through force or strategy. But survival demanded he accept reality, and the reality was that Elena held better cards than he did. 3 conditions, Damien said. First, the money you transferred stays in trust for our child, but I retain control of all future earnings and assets. You don't make unilateral financial decisions without discussion. Elena considered. Agreed, as long as I have transparent access to all financial information and equal say in major expenditures. Second, Damien continued, whatever information you have on my associates, my business operations, stays between us. You don't use it as leverage against anyone without my approval. Agreed, with the same reciprocal protection, Elena said. You don't take actions that expose me or my sources without discussion first. Third, Damien said, this alliance is exclusive. You're not building power bases separate from me, not making deals with other families behind my back. We're partners or we're nothing. Elena held his eyes for a long moment. Agreed. But that works both ways, Damien. No more Natashas, no more mistresses or distractions that create vulnerabilities. If we're building something together, we can't have outside complications weakening our position. It was fair, brutally fair. She was asking for the same loyalty and commitment she was offering. Damien extended his hand. Partners. Elena shook it firmly. Partners. The agreement hung between them, fragile and new. 6 years of marriage had ended in a single conversation. What replaced it was uncertain, undefined, built on necessity rather than affection. But as Damien looked at his wife, really looked at her, seeing the intelligence and calculation behind eyes he'd thought were merely decorative, he realized this might be the most honest relationship he'd ever had. Now, Elena said, releasing his hand and returning to her tablet, let's plan how to destroy the Korsakovs. They worked through the morning, building strategy like generals planning a campaign. Elena outlined what she knew about Victor's operations, his key lieutenants, his financial vulnerabilities. Damien contributed his understanding of commission politics, the power dynamics between families, the formal and informal rules that governed their world. It was the first real conversation they'd ever had. And despite everything, despite the anger and resentment and shock, Damien found himself impressed. Elena's mind worked differently than his. Where he thought in terms of force and direct confrontation, she thought in terms of information and manipulation. Where he planned to dominate, she planned to control through knowledge. The gala itself is the key, Elena explained. Victor needs to establish Natasha publicly as his cousin, someone with legitimate business interests. That gives her cover for future meetings with you, explains why she's in the city, creates the social foundation for the relationship he wants her to build. She pulled up guest lists and seating arrangements. He'll introduce her to the other families, probably emphasizing her Moscow connections and investment capital. She'll charm the older men, flatter the wives, present as sophisticated and cultured. By the end of the night, everyone will remember her. Which means we can't just expose her without damaging our credibility, Damien said, understanding the trap. If we accuse Victor's cousin of being an assassin without proof, we look paranoid. Exactly. Elena highlighted several names on the guest list. The commission expects evidence, not accusations. We need to catch her in the act, make her reveal herself in a way that can't be denied. So we give her an opportunity, Damien said slowly. Create a situation where she thinks she can make her move, but we control the environment. Elena nodded. I've been thinking about that. The hotel has private dining rooms on the second floor. What if you invite her to a private business discussion during the gala? Somewhere secluded, intimate, perfect for her to make her play. And you document everything, Damien finished. Video, audio, witnesses if needed. Not me directly, Elena said. I can't be seen as the one who caught her. That raises too many questions. But Marcus can position security in the right places, and I might have access to the hotel's internal security systems. Of course she did. Damien wondered what else his wife had access to that he didn't know about. They refined the plan over the next hours, anticipating problems and building contingencies. Elena's pregnancy made her tire easily, and Damien noticed her wincing occasionally, shifting position in her chair. When did you last sleep? He asked. 2 nights ago, Elena admitted. I've been monitoring Natasha's communications, tracking Victor's movements, preparing for this conversation with you. Sleep seemed less important than survival. Damien felt an unexpected stab of guilt. His wife was pregnant, exhausted, carrying information that could save or destroy them both, and she'd been doing it alone while he played with Russian assassins. You should rest, he said. We have time before the gala. I can review the files you showed me, start making preliminary arrangements with Marcus. Elena looked surprised by the concern. I can manage. You're carrying my child, Damien interrupted. Our child. That's not nothing, Elena. Whatever else is happening between us, that matters. Something shifted in her expression. Not warmth exactly, but a softening of the careful distance she'd maintained. Thank you, she said quietly. He stood to leave, then paused at the door. Your father taught you well. He would be proud of what you've become. Elena's eyes glistened briefly. He told me once that the world would underestimate me because I was a woman, because I was quiet, because I didn't fit their image of power. He said that was my greatest advantage, that invisible people can move freely while everyone watches the obvious threats. He was right, Damien said. I underestimated you completely. Yes, Elena agreed. You did. After he left, Damien returned to his study and spent the day reviewing everything Elena had compiled. Financial records, surveillance reports, intercepted communications. It was a masterclass in intelligence gathering. She'd built networks inside his organization, cultivated sources he didn't know existed, monitored threats he'd been blind to. The Korsakov plot was just one of several potential dangers she'd identified. There were others, rival families probing for weaknesses, federal investigations that might eventually reach his operations, internal security risks from associates with hidden agendas. She'd been protecting him for years without him knowing it. The realization was humbling and infuriating and oddly reassuring. Marcus arrived in the afternoon, summoned by Damien's encrypted message. The head of security was ex-military, loyal, and one of the few people Damien trusted with his life. He needed to be read into the situation carefully. "Close the door," Damien said when Marcus entered. "What I'm about to tell you stays between us." For the next hour, he explained what Elena had discovered about the Korsakov threat, carefully omitting how she'd obtained the information. Marcus listened without interruption, his expression growing darker as the scope of the conspiracy became clear. "Victor's been in your home," Marcus said finally. "He's met your wife, seen your security arrangements, mapped the estate. If he's planning what you're suggesting, he knows exactly how to penetrate our defenses." "Which is why we're not waiting for him to make a move here," Damien said. "The gala gives us neutral territory and witnesses, but I need you to coordinate security without making it obvious. Can you position cameras in the second-floor dining rooms, audio surveillance that can't be detected?" Marcus thought for a moment. "The hotel uses our security company for their high-profile events. I can have my people install additional monitoring in the private rooms, disguised as routine upgrades. But if Victor's people are watching, they might notice unusual activity." "Make it look like standard gala preparation," Damien said. "Enhanced security for the commission families, updated equipment, nothing that suggests we're targeting anyone specific." "And Mrs. Rivas?" Marcus asked carefully. "Does she know about this operation?" Damien hesitated. Marcus had served him for 8 years, had proven his discretion countless times. But bringing him fully into the new dynamic between Damien and Elena meant trusting him with information that changed everything about their household structure. "Mrs. Rivas is the one who discovered the threat," Damien said finally. "She's been monitoring security risks independently. Going forward, she'll be involved in strategic decisions. I need you to respect that and work with her as you would with me." Marcus's expression remained neutral, but Damien caught the flash of surprise. "Understood. Does this change the security protocols around her?" "Increase them," Damien said, subtly. "If Victor suspects she knows something, she becomes a target. I want protection on her that doesn't look like protection. Can you arrange that?" "Already done," Marcus said. "I increased her details 6 weeks ago when I noticed she was leaving the estate at unusual times. Wanted to ensure she was safe without restricting her movements." Damien stared at him. "You've been following my wife?" "I've been protecting your wife," Marcus corrected. "That's my job." "And respectfully, sir, she was acting unlike herself. More purposeful, more alert, carrying secure devices I didn't recognize. Made me think she might be in some kind of trouble." So Marcus had noticed what Damien had missed. Another piece of evidence that he'd been blind to his own household. "Where was she going?" Damien asked. "Libraries mostly, sometimes meetings with attorneys, once to a private investigation firm downtown." Marcus pulled out his phone, showing a discreet log. "Nothing illegal or concerning, but definitely more active than her usual routine of charity events and shopping." Elena had been building her intelligence network in plain sight, and even his head of security had noticed the change before Damien did. "Keep monitoring," Damien said, "but understand that she's not in trouble. She's handling business. Our business now." "Understood." Marcus pocketed his phone. "I'll coordinate with her directly on security arrangements for the gala?" "Yes. She has information about potential threats that you'll need to know. Treat her briefings with the same weight you would mine." After Marcus left, Damien sat alone in his study, feeling the weight of transformation settling around him. His empire was changing shape, expanding to include a partner he'd spent 6 years ignoring. The comfortable certainty of total control was gone, replaced by something more complex and unpredictable, but also, possibly, stronger. The next day passed in careful preparation. Damien met with his key lieutenants, ensuring they would be positioned strategically at the gala. He confirmed the commission's security protocols with the other family heads, making sure the neutral ground rules would be enforced, He reviewed financial records, identifying which of his assets might be vulnerable if the Korsakov plot succeeded. Elena spent the day in her quarters, occasionally emerging to consult with Marcus or review details of the security arrangements. Damien noticed the way his staff had started to treat her differently, with more deference, more attention, more awareness that she was someone who mattered beyond her decorative role. Word was spreading through the household that Mrs. Rivas was not what she seemed. The evening before the gala, Damien received a message from Victor. Looking forward to tomorrow night. Natasha is very excited to meet more of your associates. I think you'll find her quite impressive. We should discuss the warehouse situation further. I have some additional ideas about expansion. The casual confidence in the message made Damien's blood boil. Victor thought he'd already won, that Damien was walking blindly into the trap. He typed a careful response. Looking forward to it as well. Always interested in discussing opportunities with capable people. See you tomorrow. Let Victor think everything was proceeding according to plan. That night, Damien found himself walking through the house, unable to sleep. He ended up in the east wing, standing outside Elena's door. Light showed beneath it. She was awake too. He knocked softly. Elena opened the door in a silk nightgown, her hair in a loose braid. She looked young like this, vulnerable in a way she never allowed during their business discussions. Can't sleep either? She asked. Too much to think about, Damien admitted. Tomorrow changes everything, one way or another. Elena stepped aside, letting him enter. Her sitting room was dimly lit by a single lamp, paper spread across her desk, from whatever she'd been working on. I've been thinking about what happens after, she said. Assuming we survive the gala and expose the Korsakovs, assuming the commission stands with us against the Bratva threat, what comes next? We consolidate power, Damien said automatically. Strengthen our position, ensure no one else sees us as vulnerable. We also become targets, Elena countered. The Bratva doesn't forgive public humiliation. If we expose Natasha and Victor, we're declaring war on the entire organization. They'll retaliate. She moved to the window, looking out at the grounds. My father used to say that the problem with winning battles is that you still have to survive the peace. Enemies you defeat publicly become martyrs. Better to defeat them quietly, make them disappear without anyone knowing you were involved. You're saying we should handle this differently? Damien asked. I'm saying we need to think beyond tomorrow night, Elena said. Exposing the Korsakovs satisfies our immediate need for safety and sends a message to the Commission. But it also burns bridges with the Russian families, creates long-term security problems, and positions us as aggressive rather than defensive. She turned to face him. What if there's a way to neutralize the threat without open warfare? Make Victor withdraw on his own? Make the Bratva decide we're not worth the risk? Damien considered the suggestion. It aligned with Elena's preference for manipulation over confrontation, information over force, but he couldn't see the angle. What are you proposing? He asked. I'm not sure yet, Elena admitted, but I think we should be prepared to pivot tomorrow night. Depending on how things unfold, we might have options beyond just exposing Natasha publicly. She returned to her desk, pulling up files on her tablet. I've been researching Victor's position within the Korsakov family. He's not the head. His uncle Mikhail controls their operations from Moscow. Victor's been pushing for expansion into our territory as a way to prove himself, to establish his own power base. So if he fails publicly, his uncle loses confidence in him, Damien said, seeing where she was going. More than that, Elena said. If we can make it look like Victor's plan was exposed because of his own incompetence, because he underestimated us or made strategic mistakes, Mikhail might decide his nephew is a liability. The Bratva has its own internal politics. They might handle Victor for us. It was clever, ruthless, exactly the kind of indirect strategy that would minimize their risk while achieving the same goal. You're talking about turning Victor into a cautionary tale, Damien said. I'm talking about making him someone else's problem, Elena replied. We survive, we demonstrate strength, but we do it in a way that makes the Bratva pull back rather than escalate. She met his eyes. But it requires careful execution tomorrow night. We can't just expose the plot. We have to expose it in a way that makes Victor look incompetent, sloppy, unworthy of the resources his uncle invested in this operation. Damien felt a smile tugging at his lips despite everything. You're devious. I'm strategic, Elena corrected. There's a difference. They talked into the early morning hours, refining approaches, building contingencies, exploring possibilities neither of them would have considered alone. And for the first time since their wedding night 6 years ago, Damien felt like he was truly seeing his wife. Not the decorative figure he'd married for connections and legitimacy, but the woman she'd been hiding beneath that surface, brilliant, calculating, dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with physical force. His father had taught him that power came from control, from dominating every situation and person around you. But Elena's father had taught her something different, that power came from information, from seeing what others missed, from being underestimated until the moment you revealed your true nature. And watching her work, seeing her mind solve problems he hadn't even recognized, Damien realized that perhaps control and partnership weren't as incompatible as he'd always believed. Perhaps real power came from knowing when to share it. As dawn approached and they finalized their plans for the gala, Damien stood to leave. At the door, he paused. "Elena," he said, "whatever happens tomorrow night, whatever we face going forward, thank you for the warning, for the partnership, for not just destroying me when you had the chance." Elena's expression softened slightly. "I told you, Damien, despite everything, you're the father of my child, and I'm not interested in ruling ashes. I'd rather build something that lasts." She placed a hand on her stomach. "Our daughter deserves better than parents who destroy each other. She deserves to inherit an empire, not ruins." "Our daughter," Damien repeated. Something about hearing Elena say those words, about acknowledging the life they'd created together, made everything else feel simultaneously more complicated and more clear. "The commission gala starts at 8, Elena said. "I suggest we arrive together. Make a statement that things have changed between us, even if people don't understand what that means yet." "Agreed," Damien said. "Partners entering the battlefield together." "Partners?" Elena confirmed. As he walked back through the quiet house toward his own quarters, Damien felt the full weight of what tomorrow would bring. They would face the Korsakovs, expose the conspiracy, navigate commission politics, and somehow emerge stronger rather than fractured. And he would do it standing beside a wife he'd spent 6 years not knowing. The invisible queen had spoken. Now she would move her pieces. And the city would discover that the silent woman behind Damien Rivas was the most dangerous player in the game. The Grandview Hotel rose 30 stories above the city center, its Art Deco facade gleaming in the evening light. For decades, it had served as neutral ground for the Commission's most important gatherings, elegant enough to reflect their power, secure enough to guarantee their safety, symbolic enough that no single family could claim ownership. Damien's car pulled up to the entrance precisely at 8. He'd chosen the Bentley rather than the armored SUV he typically used, making a statement about confidence rather than fear. Marcus sat in the front passenger seat, his security team already positioned throughout the hotel in coordination with the Commission's shared protection detail. Elena sat beside Damien in the back, composed and elegant in a midnight blue gown that accommodated her pregnancy while emphasizing her sophistication. Diamond earrings that had belonged to her mother caught the light. Her hair was styled in an intricate updo that must have taken hours. She looked every inch the mafia queen she'd revealed herself to be. "Ready?" Damien asked quietly. Elena's hand rested on her stomach, a gesture that had become habitual over recent months. "As much as I can be. Remember, we observe first. Let Victor and Natasha make their moves before we respond. The more confident they become, the more likely they are to make mistakes. And if they don't make mistakes, then we create opportunities for them," Elena said. "But patience first. Let them think everything is proceeding according to their plan." The hotel's lobby was already filled with guests arriving for the gala. Family heads with their wives, key lieutenants who'd earned the privilege of attendance, business associates who existed in the gray area between legitimate enterprise and criminal organization. Security was everywhere but invisible, dressed in hotel staff uniforms that concealed their true purpose. Damien offered Elena his arm as they entered, a gesture of partnership rather than possession. He felt eyes turning toward them, noticed the subtle shift in conversation as people registered their arrival together. Normally, Elena would have arrived separately or slipped in quietly after him. Coming in together, presenting as a unified front, was a deviation from established pattern. People would notice, people would talk. That was the point. "Damien!" A booming voice cut through the crowd. Antonio Moretti, head of one of the 5 founding families, approached with his characteristic swagger. At 65, he still carried himself like the street fighter he'd been in his youth, though his suits were now custom-tailored and his violence mostly delegated to younger men. "Good to see you, and Elena, you look radiant. How are you feeling?" "Thank you, Antonio," Elena said warmly. "I'm well, looking forward to a lovely evening." Antonio's eyes flickered between them, noting the way Damien kept Elena close, the way she carried herself with new confidence. "Congratulations again on the baby. A daughter, I heard. That's wonderful. Family is everything in our world." "Indeed it is," Damien agreed, "which is why we take threats to family very seriously." It was a careful statement, neutral on the surface but weighted with meaning for anyone listening closely. Antonio's expression sharpened slightly, recognizing the subtext. "As we should," Antonio said. "The commission exists to protect all our families. If there are concerns, they should be raised properly." "All in good time," Damien said smoothly. "Tonight is for celebration first, business later." They moved deeper into the crowd, exchanging greetings with other families, navigating the complex web of alliances and rivalries that defined commission politics. Elena handled it perfectly, Damien noticed, warm without being familiar, respectful without being submissive, present in a way she'd never been at these events before. People responded to the change. Wives who'd previously treated Elena as inconsequential now engaged her in substantive conversation. Family heads who'd barely acknowledged her existence now asked her opinions on city development projects and charitable foundations. Word had spread somehow that Mrs. Rivas was not what she'd appeared to be. "There," Elena murmured quietly, her lips barely moving. "By the east entrance, Victor and Natasha." Damien followed her gaze without obviously looking. Victor Korsakov cut an impressive figure at 52, tall, silver-haired, wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo that probably cost more than most people's cars. He moved through the crowd with the confidence of someone who'd built his empire through a combination of brutality and political savvy. And beside him, Natasha Volkov was everything Damien remembered from their encounter 2 nights ago. Stunning in a red dress that walked the line between elegant and provocative, she commanded attention without seeming to try. Her smile was warm, her laugh musical, her eyes sharp as she catalogued everyone in the room, a professional in every sense of the word. "She's good," Elena observed. "Watch how she mirrors Victor's body language but maintains her own space. Not too close to seem dependent, not too distant to seem unconnected. She's establishing herself as an independent player while still being associated with his power." Damien saw it now that Elena pointed it out. The subtle choreography of their entrance, the way Natasha engaged with other guests while always remaining aware of Victor's position, the calculated balance of sophistication and accessibility she projected. "How do you want to play this?" he asked. "Let them come to us," Elena said. "Victor will want to make formal introductions, establish Natasha's credentials publicly. We accept graciously, show no suspicion. You express interest in her investment opportunities. I play the curious wife, charmed by her stories about Moscow. We give them exactly what they expect." Within minutes, Victor was making his way toward them, Natasha at his side. His smile was broad, genuine seeming, the smile of a man among friends and allies. "Damien, my friend!" Victor clasped his hand firmly. "And the lovely Elena. How wonderful you both look tonight. Please allow me to introduce my cousin, Natasha Volkov. She's recently arrived from Moscow and is exploring business opportunities in our city." Natasha extended her hand to Damien first, her grip confident without being aggressive. "Mr. Rivas, I've heard so much about your success. It's an honor to finally meet you." "The pleasure is mine," Damien said, playing his role. "Victor speaks highly of your business acumen. Always happy to meet someone with fresh perspectives on our city's potential." Natasha turned to Elena, her smile shifting to something warmer, more personal. "And you must be Elena. Victor mentioned you're expecting your first child. How exciting. I hope you're feeling well." "Thank you, I am," Elena said, her tone friendly but measured. "And what brings you to our city specifically? Moscow must offer considerable opportunities of its own." "Oh, it does," Natasha agreed. "But there's something about American enterprise, the way you build empires here, that fascinates me. In Russia, everything is so structured. Here, there's more room for innovation, for creative approaches to traditional businesses. It was a pitch, carefully crafted to appeal to both Damien's ego and his business interests. The suggestion that Natasha saw American methods as superior, that she wanted to learn from them, that she represented access to Russian markets and capital. "I'd love to hear more about your interests," Damien said. "Perhaps we could arrange a meeting to discuss potential partnerships. I'm always looking for opportunities to expand into new markets." "I would enjoy that very much," Natasha said, her eyes holding his just a fraction longer than strictly professional. "Victor mentioned you have excellent instincts for profitable ventures. I'm eager to learn from someone with your experience." Elena's hand tightened almost imperceptibly on Damien's arm. A warning or a reminder to stay focused, he wasn't sure which. "Perhaps tomorrow?" Victor suggested. "Natasha's staying at the hotel this weekend. You could meet for coffee, discuss possibilities in a more relaxed setting." "Tomorrow might be difficult," Damien said carefully. "But I'm hosting a small gathering in one of the private dining rooms later tonight, after the formal program concludes. Just a few key associates discussing some new development projects. If you're interested, Natasha, you'd be welcome to join us." He felt Elena's subtle approval in the way she relaxed slightly against him. They discussed this approach, creating the opportunity tonight, on their terms, in a controlled environment. Natasha's eyes lit up with what appeared to be genuine pleasure. "I would love that. Thank you for including me." "Excellent," Victor said, satisfaction evident in his voice. "I'm sure you'll find the conversation valuable, Natasha. Damien's development projects are legendary in our industry." They chatted for a few more minutes about inconsequential matters: the hotel's renovations, the Commission's charity initiatives, Moscow's brutal winter compared to their city's mild climate. Then Victor and Natasha moved on to work the rest of the room, leaving Damien and Elena to process the encounter. "She took the bait," Damien murmured. "Of course she did," Elena replied. "Private meeting, powerful man, opportunity to be alone. It's exactly what she was hoping for. Now she'll spend the evening confirming her read on you, making sure you're as interested as you seem, preparing for her move. And we'll spend the evening making sure Marcus has everything in place." They separated to work different sections of the crowd. Damien engaged with family heads about commission business, trade agreements, territorial boundaries. Elena moved among the wives, discussing charity projects and social events, building relationships that would matter later. To anyone watching, it appeared to be a typical commission gala: networking, posturing, the careful dance of power and influence. But beneath the surface, pieces were moving into position. Marcus appeared briefly at Damien's side during a transition between conversations. "The Royale room is ready," he said quietly. "Cameras installed in the crown molding, audio in the centerpiece arrangement. Complete coverage, all feeding to secure servers. Mrs. Rivas's contact confirmed the hotel's security footage is accessible if needed." "Good," Damien said. "And Natasha's room?" "Monitored as requested. She made 2 encrypted calls earlier this evening. We couldn't break the encryption, but the timing and duration match expected check-ins with handlers." So Natasha was reporting to someone, confirming her progress. That aligned with Elena's intelligence about her being an operative rather than just Victor's cousin. The formal program began at 9. Speeches from commission leaders about unity and prosperity, carefully worded to sound legitimate, while everyone present understood the real meaning. Awards given to members who'd contributed to community development that year. Toasts to families who'd resolved disputes peacefully through commission mediation. It was theater, all of it, but necessary theater that maintained the illusion of civilization over their fundamentally brutal enterprise. Damien noticed Natasha watching him during the speeches, her attention seemingly casual, but consistently returning to his position in the room, building familiarity, creating the sense of connection that would make a private invitation feel natural rather than suspicious. Elena noticed, too. "She's establishing the pattern," she whispered during the applause after Antonio Moretti's speech about tradition and honor. "Making sure you're aware she's aware of you, creating anticipation." "Does it bother you?" Damien asked. "Watching her work?" "Should it?" Elena's expression was unreadable. "This isn't about romance or attraction, Damien. It's about survival. And I'm curious to see exactly how she plans to make her move. Professional interest." The formal program concluded at 10:30. Guests dispersed throughout the hotel. some to the main ballroom for dancing and drinks, others to the smoking lounge for cigars and whiskey, still others to private rooms for business discussions that required more discretion. Damien waited 15 minutes before making his way to the second floor, giving his invited associates time to gather in the Royale room. 5 men he trusted with sensitive information, not family by blood, but loyal through years of profitable partnership. They would provide the appearance of a legitimate business meeting while also serving as witnesses to whatever happened. The Royale room was smaller than the Grand Ballroom but elegantly appointed. Dark wood paneling, crystal chandeliers, a long table set with coffee service and premium liquor. His associates were already seated, discussing a recent shipping contract dispute when Damien entered. "Gentlemen," he greeted them, "thank you for joining me. We have some interesting opportunities to discuss tonight, and I've invited someone new to get her perspective." Marcus appeared in the doorway moments later, escorting Natasha. She'd freshened up somehow, her makeup perfect, her dress still immaculate despite hours of socializing. She carried herself with the poise of someone accustomed to high-stakes environments. "Ms. Volkov," Damien said warmly, "thank you for joining us. Please sit." He gestured to the chair beside his at the head of the table. Close enough for intimate conversation, positioned to make her feel like an honored guest rather than a supplicant. Natasha settled gracefully into the seat, accepting a glass of wine from the server. "Thank you for including me, Mr. Rivas. I'm eager to learn about your development projects." For the next hour, they discussed legitimate business, proposed construction in the Port District, real estate opportunities in gentrifying neighborhoods, investment strategies for emerging markets. Natasha contributed intelligently, demonstrating knowledge of international finance and development trends. She was good, Damien admitted to himself. If he hadn't known what she really was, he would have been impressed by her credentials. As midnight approached, the other associates began making their exits. Early morning meetings, family obligations, the usual excuses. Damien had briefed them beforehand to leave gradually, creating the appearance of a meeting winding down naturally, rather than being deliberately orchestrated. Soon, only Damien and Natasha remained in the room. "More wine?" Damien offered, standing to refill his own glass. "Please," Natasha said, "this has been such a valuable conversation. You have an impressive understanding of market dynamics." Damien poured wine for both of them, aware that somewhere above them, cameras were recording every movement, every word. Marcus would be monitoring from the security office, ready to intervene if needed. "You know," Natasha said, accepting her glass, "Victor mentioned you might be interested in exploring opportunities in Eastern Europe. The Russian market has been opening up in interesting ways recently." "I'm always interested in expansion," Damien said, returning to his seat. "Though I'll admit I'm cautious about markets I don't fully understand. The political complexity in Russia seems challenging." "It can be," Natasha agreed, "but that's where the right partnerships become valuable. Someone who understands both worlds, who can navigate between American business practices and Russian expectations." She leaned forward slightly. "Someone like me, for instance." There it was, the opening move. Positioning herself as indispensable, creating the foundation for ongoing contact. "That's an interesting proposition," Damien said carefully. "What exactly would that partnership look like?" Natasha's smile widened. "Well, I imagine it would require trust, regular communication, sharing information that might be sensitive, the kind of relationship that goes beyond simple business transactions." Her hand moved to rest on the table near his, not quite touching, but close enough to be suggestive. "I find that the best partnerships are built on personal connection as well as professional interests. Don't you agree?" Damien felt the trap closing around him, or rather, around her. Everything she was saying, every gesture, every implication was being recorded. Evidence of her approach, her methods, her intent to compromise him. "Personal connection certainly matters," he agreed. "Though I've learned to be careful about mixing business with more intimate arrangements. My wife, for instance, has very clear expectations about professional boundaries." It was a test, a chance to see how Natasha would respond to resistance. "Of course," Natasha said smoothly, "I completely understand, though in my experience, successful men often appreciate the freedom to make their own choices about their personal lives. And what happens in private business meetings stays private, doesn't it?" She lifted her wine glass in a small toast. to profitable partnerships and the discretion that makes them possible. Damien raised his glass but didn't drink. Instead, he set it down carefully and met Natasha's eyes directly. "I have a confession to make," he said quietly. "This evening hasn't been entirely what it seemed." Natasha's expression flickered, just for a moment, uncertainty crossing her features. "I'm not sure what you mean." "I mean that I know who you really are," Damien said. "Not Victor's cousin, not a legitimate businesswoman exploring investment opportunities. You're Solnsevskaya Bratva, sent here to compromise me, to gather intelligence, and eventually to kill me so Victor can take over my operations." The room seemed to freeze. Natasha's face went carefully blank, her training taking over. "That's a very serious accusation, Mr. Rivas. Based on what exactly?" "Based on intercepted communications between you and your handlers in Moscow," Damien said. "Based on surveillance of your actual activities in this city. Based on the thallium you were planning to administer once you'd secured my trust." He stood, moving to the door and opening it. Marcus entered, followed by 2 other security personnel. "Based on the fact that my wife is considerably more observant than you anticipated," Damien finished. Natasha's composure cracked slightly. "Your wife? The decorative Mrs. Rivas who sits quietly while you conduct business?" "The same," a new voice said from the doorway. Elena stepped into the room, tablet in hand, looking remarkably composed for someone crashing an interrogation. "Though I suspect you underestimated me as thoroughly as my husband once did." She approached the table, setting down the tablet to display surveillance photos. Natasha meeting with known Russian operatives, financial transfers from Bratva accounts, communications in encrypted Russian that had been decoded and translated. "You made several mistakes," Elena said conversationally. "The most significant was assuming that because I'm quiet, I'm uninvolved. I've been tracking Victor's expansion attempts for 8 months. The moment you arrived in the city, I knew what you were." Natasha's eyes hardened. "And yet you let me continue. Why? If you knew, why not expose me immediately?" "Because exposure requires proof," Elena said. "And because we needed to understand the full scope of the operation. How many people were involved, what the timeline was, whether Victor was acting independently or under direct orders from Moscow." She pulled up another file. "Thanks to your communications and your activities tonight, we now have comprehensive documentation of the assassination plot, Victor's involvement, and the Bratva's plans to take over port operations. Evidence that will be very interesting to the Commission." Natasha stood abruptly, her hand moving toward her small clutch purse. Marcus was faster, intercepting her before she could reach whatever weapon she carried. "I wouldn't," Marcus said calmly, removing a small vial from her purse. "Is this the thallium, or were you planning something more immediate for tonight?" "You have no authority to hold me," Natasha said coldly. "I'm a guest at a commission event, neutral ground. Detaining me violates every protocol your organization pretends to respect." "You're absolutely right," Damien agreed, "which is why we're not detaining you. You're free to leave at any time." Natasha looked suspicious. "Then what is this?" "This is a negotiation," Elena said. "We could expose you publicly, bring this evidence to the Commission, reveal Victor's conspiracy, watch the Bratva lose face internationally when their assassination plot fails so spectacularly." She paused. "Or we could offer you a different option." "I'm listening," Natasha said carefully. "You report back to your handlers that the operation is compromised," Elena said. "You tell them that Damien Rivas is more alert than Victor assessed, that his security is tighter than expected, that proceeding with the assassination would likely fail and expose Bratva involvement publicly." "Why would I do that?" Natasha asked. "Because the alternative is worse," Damien said. "We present this evidence to the Commission and to your superiors in Moscow. We make Victor look like an incompetent fool who underestimated his target and jeopardized a major Bratva operation through sloppy planning and arrogance. We ensure that your organization blames Victor for the failure, not you." Understanding dawned in Natasha's expression. "You want me to help you destroy Victor's reputation." "We want you to survive," Elena corrected. "Intelligence operatives who fail publicly don't usually survive their organization's disappointment. But operatives who recognize when a mission is impossible and report it accurately, they're valuable, trustworthy. They get reassigned to operations that might actually succeed." It was brilliant, Damien realized. Elena wasn't just neutralizing the immediate threat. She was turning Natasha into a weapon against Victor while giving the operative a face-saving exit. "And if I refuse?" Natasha asked. "Then we release everything tomorrow morning," Damien said. "Commission sees it. Moscow sees it. Everyone knows the Bratva sent an operative who was caught within weeks, whose cover was compromised, whose mission failed before it began. Not good for your career prospects." Natasha was silent for a long moment, calculating odds and outcomes. Finally, she spoke. "What guarantees do I have that you won't expose me anyway?" "None," Elena said honestly. "Except that it's not in our interest to start a war with the Bratva. We want Victor removed and his expansion attempts stopped. You give us that, and we have no reason to make you a martyr." "I need to think about this," Natasha said. "You have until dawn," Damien said. "After that, the evidence goes to the commission regardless of what you decide. But if you're smart, you'll recognize that we're offering you the best outcome available given the circumstances." Marcus and his team escorted Natasha from the room, leaving Damien and Elena alone. The tension that had sustained them through the confrontation drained away, replaced by exhausted relief. "That was a risk," Damien said. "Giving her time to think, to possibly warn Victor." "She won't warn him," Elena said confidently. "Warning Victor means admitting failure while there's still a chance to manage the narrative. She's a professional. She'll choose survival over loyalty to an operation that's already compromised. And if you're wrong, then we still have all the evidence," Elena said, "and Victor learns tomorrow that his conspiracy is exposed. Either way, we win. This just gives us a cleaner victory with less international blowback." Damien looked at his wife with newfound respect. "You thought this through from every angle, didn't you?" "I had 6 years to learn how to think like my father," Elena said. "He would have approved of this approach. Defeat your enemies, but give them a path to retreat. Make them solve your problems while believing they're solving their own." She moved to the window, looking out at the city lights. "The question now is what Victor does when Natasha reports back, whether he accepts defeat or tries to salvage the situation through more direct means. If he's smart, he withdraws quietly," Damien said. "Blames it on bad intelligence, market conditions, anything but his own failure. And if he's not smart, then things get considerably more violent," Damien admitted. "But at least now we're prepared. We know what he was planning. We have evidence. We have the commission's attention if we need it." Elena turned from the window, her hand moving to her stomach. "Our daughter will be born into this world, Damien, into this constant calculation of threats and advantages, allies and enemies. Sometimes I wonder if that's fair to her." It was the first time Damien had heard Elena express doubt about their life, about the empire they were building together. "We'll protect her," he said. "Both of us. We'll teach her what your father taught you, how to see clearly, how to think strategically, how to survive in a world that will underestimate her." "And what your father taught you," Elena added, "how to project strength, how to command respect, how to fight when necessary." She smiled slightly. "Between the two of us, she'll be formidable. Terrifying, more likely," Damien said. "The combination of your mind and my determination? The world won't know what hit it." They stood together in the quiet room, watching the city that was their kingdom and their battlefield. The gala continued below them, music and laughter drifting up through the hotel's elegant architecture. The commission families celebrated and schemed, built alliances and planned betrayals, maintained the delicate balance that kept their world functioning. And somewhere in the hotel, Natasha Volkov was making the most important decision of her life. Whether to accept the exit Elena had offered, or try to fight her way out of a trap that had closed around her before she'd even realized she was the prey. By morning, they would know which path she'd chosen. By morning, everything would change again. But for now, in this moment, Damien stood beside his wife and felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Not control. Something better. Partnership. Natasha's answer came at 4 a.m, delivered through an encrypted message to the secure phone Elena had provided during the confrontation. 3 words in Russian, followed by a detailed report in English, outlining how she would frame the operation's failure to her superiors. Elena read it in her hotel suite. She and Damien had decided to stay at the Grand View rather than return to the estate, maintaining visibility at the commission event while keeping close to the situation. She forwarded the message to Damien's phone, then dressed and walked down the hallway to his room. He answered her knock immediately, already awake. wearing slacks and an undershirt that suggested he'd been pacing rather than sleeping. She accepted, Elena said without preamble. Look at the structure of her report. She's blaming the failure on Victor's faulty intelligence assessment and rushed timeline, making it clear that the operation could have succeeded with proper planning, but was compromised by his eagerness to prove himself to Moscow. Damien scanned the message, his expression hardening as he absorbed the implications. She's not just covering herself. She's actively destroying Victor's credibility with the Bratva leadership. Exactly, Elena confirmed. By tomorrow, Mikhail Korsakov will receive a report explaining that his nephew's American expansion attempt failed because Victor underestimated the target, misread the security situation, and pushed an operative into a compromised position. Every mistake lands on Victor. And Natasha emerges as the professional who recognized the problem and reported it accurately, Damien said, saving the Bratva from further exposure. She's good, Elena admitted. I respect the efficiency. She turned a catastrophic failure into a demonstration of her own judgment and reliability. Damien set down his phone and looked at his wife with something approaching awe. You gave her the exact framework she needed to survive while destroying Victor. How did you know she'd take it? Because I understand what it's like to be underestimated, Elena said quietly. To be seen as decorative, as a tool rather than a person. Natasha is brilliant at what she does, but she's still a woman in a male-dominated organization. She knows that survival means being smarter than everyone around her while making them think they're in control. She moved to the window, watching the pre-dawn darkness beginning to lighten over the city. I gave her respect and a way out. That's more than most men in her position would offer. She recognized the value of both. So what happens now? Damien asked. Victor will know something went wrong when Natasha reports back. He'll realize his plan failed. He'll scramble, Elena predicted. Try to salvage something, maybe attempt a more direct approach. Men like Victor don't accept defeat gracefully. They escalate. As if summoning him through conversation, Damien's phone buzzed with an incoming call. Victor Korsakov's name appeared on the screen. Damien and Elena exchanged a glance. It was 4:30 in the morning. No legitimate reason for Victor to be calling at this hour unless something had shifted dramatically. Answer it, Elena mouthed. Speaker! Damien accepted the call and tapped the speaker button. Victor, this is early, even for us. Victor's voice came through tight with barely controlled anger. We need to talk now, the Sapphire Lounge in 20 minutes. About what? Damien kept his tone neutral, uninflected. About the fact that you humiliated my cousin last night, Victor hissed. About the accusations you made, the threats you issued, about the gross disrespect you showed to my family and, by extension, to me. So Natasha had reported to Victor first, preparing him for what would come from Moscow. Smart of her to manage the immediate situation before the larger consequences landed. I treated your cousin exactly as she deserved, Damien said calmly, as a foreign operative sent to assassinate me. If you want to discuss disrespect, Victor, perhaps we should talk about plotting murder against a commission member. 20 minutes, Victor repeated. Sapphire Lounge. Come alone, or I'll assume you're too afraid to face me directly. The call disconnected. Elena was already moving, pulling clothes from her overnight bag with efficient movements. He's panicking, trying to regain control through confrontation. This is either an attempt at negotiation or a setup for violence. Probably both, Damien said, reaching for his own clothes. He'll try to negotiate first, see if he can salvage anything. If that fails, he'll have backup plans ready. You're not going alone, Elena said firmly. I have to appear to go alone, Damien corrected. But Marcus will have people positioned throughout the hotel, and you'll be monitoring everything remotely, I assume. Elena's slight smile confirmed she'd already planned exactly that. The hotel's security system is remarkably accessible once you know where to look. I'll have eyes on the Sapphire Lounge, the surrounding hallways, and Victor's room. If he makes any move toward violence, we'll know before it happens. She paused in her dressing, meeting his eyes directly. But Damien, if this goes wrong, if he has more resources positioned than we anticipate, you need to be prepared to walk away. Your pride isn't worth dying over. Neither is my empire worth surrendering, Damien said. But I hear you. I'll be careful. We didn't survive this long by being reckless. 20 minutes later, Damien entered the Sapphire Lounge on the hotel's mezzanine level. The upscale bar was closed at this hour, its intimate booths and gleaming bar top empty, except for Viktor Korsakov sitting in the farthest booth, a bottle of vodka and 2 glasses already on the table. Marcus had confirmed that Viktor appeared to be alone, but 3 of his known associates were in rooms on the same floor, backup if needed, or witnesses to whatever conversation was about to happen. "Damien," Viktor said as he approached, his tone icy. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit. We have much to discuss." Damien slid into the booth across from him, noting the tension in Viktor's shoulders, the tightness around his eyes. The older man was furious, but trying to maintain composure. "You've put me in a very difficult position," Viktor said, pouring vodka into both glasses with barely controlled movements. "Natasha called me 2 hours ago. Explained your accusations, your evidence, your threats." "They weren't threats," Damien said evenly. "They were facts. Your cousin is Bratva intelligence. She was sent here to compromise me and eventually kill me. We have comprehensive evidence of the plot." "Evidence you obtained how, exactly?" Viktor challenged. "Through legal means, or through surveillance that violates every protocol the Commission has established about respecting each family's privacy?" It was a good point, one that could create problems if Viktor chose to make it a Commission issue. The families maintained a delicate balance between gathering intelligence and respecting boundaries. Aggressive surveillance of another family's operations crossed lines that could trigger sanctions. "I obtained evidence through protecting my own interests," Damien said. "When foreign operatives enter my city planning assassination, I consider that my business to investigate. The Commission would agree." Viktor's hand clenched around his glass. "You've destroyed months of planning, humiliated my cousin, jeopardized relationships that took years to build. For what? Because you're paranoid about expansion? Because you can't handle competition?" "I can handle competition just fine," Damien said coldly. "What I can't handle is being murdered so you can steal my infrastructure. There's a difference between business rivalry and assassination plots." "You have no proof I was involved," Viktor said. "Natasha's activities, whatever they were, don't implicate me. I introduced my cousin to business opportunities. What she chose to do independently isn't my responsibility." "We both know that's a lie," Damien said. "But if you want to maintain that fiction publicly, I'm willing to accept it, under certain conditions." Viktor's eyes narrowed. "What conditions?" "You withdraw from the port district," Damien said. "Completely. The warehouse agreements we signed? Null and void. Your shipping contracts through my facilities? Terminated. You pull back to your existing territory and stay there." "That's unacceptable," Viktor snapped. "Those agreements are legally binding. Breaking them would cost me millions in penalties and lost opportunities." "Consider it the cost of attempted murder," Damien said. "You gambled on a conspiracy and lost. This is your penalty. You could face much worse if I took this to the Commission." Viktor's face flushed dark red. "You arrogant bastard! You think you can dictate terms to me? I have resources you can't imagine. Support from organizations that would crush you if I asked." "Resources like the Bratva?" Damien asked. "The same organization that's about to receive a report from Natasha explaining how your sloppy planning and poor intelligence assessment compromised their operation? I wonder how supportive they'll be once they understand you failed." The color drained from Viktor's face. Natasha wouldn't throw me under to save herself." "Wouldn't she?" Damien leaned back, letting Viktor absorb the implications. "She's a professional, Viktor. Professionals survive by knowing when to cut losses. You made her mission impossible through your mistakes. She's documenting those mistakes very thoroughly." Viktor's hand trembled slightly as he lifted his vodka glass, draining it in one swallow. "You did this. You turned her against me somehow. What did you offer her?" "I offered her the truth," Damien said, "and a way to survive it. That's more than you gave her by sending her into a situation you hadn't properly assessed." For a long moment, Viktor sat in silence, his expression shifting through rage, calculation, and finally something close to desperation. He was a man watching his carefully constructed plans collapse, unable to stop the avalanche. "If I agree to your terms," Viktor said finally, "if I withdraw from the port district, what guarantee do I have that you won't destroy me anyway? That you won't take this evidence to the Commission just to eliminate a rival?" "You don't have any guarantee," Damien said honestly. "Just like I don't have any guarantee you won't try again with a different approach, different operatives, different methods. We're beyond trust, Viktor. This is purely transactional. He leaned forward. But I will tell you this. I don't want a war with the Bratva. I don't want the commission fractured by internal conflicts. I want my territory secure and my business stable. You give me that by withdrawing, and I have no reason to pursue further action against you. Victor poured himself another vodka, his hand steadier now. And if I refuse? If I decide to fight this publicly, take my chances with the commission? Then we both lose, Damien said. You lose because the evidence destroys your credibility and your Bratva support. I lose because it exposes capabilities and intelligence sources I'd prefer to keep private. But between the two of us, you lose more. I'm willing to accept those costs if necessary. Are you? The booth was silent except for the distant hum of the hotel's climate control systems. Victor stared at his vodka glass, watching the clear liquid catch the low light. I need time, he said finally, to unwind the agreements properly, to manage the business transitions without triggering penalty clauses that would bankrupt me. You have 1 week, Damien said. File the termination notices, begin the withdrawal process. If I see genuine progress, I'll hold the evidence. If I see stalling or maneuvering for position, everything goes to the commission. Victor's jaw clenched, but he nodded. 1 week, but Damien, understand this. You've made an enemy today. Not forever, perhaps, but for now. I won't forget this humiliation. I don't expect you to, Damien said, just as I won't forget that you tried to have me killed. Maybe someday circumstances will change. Maybe we'll find ourselves as allies again, but not today. He stood, preparing to leave. Victor's voice stopped him. Your wife, Victor said. Elena. She was behind this, wasn't she? The evidence, the strategy, turning Natasha. This has her fingerprints all over it. Damien smiled slightly. My wife is considerably more capable than either of us gave her credit for. That's something you should remember if you're ever tempted to try this again. The invisible woman, Victor said, something like grudging respect in his tone. I should have paid more attention to the Castellano family history. Her father was legendary for exactly this kind of operation. He taught her well, Damien agreed. Fortunately for me, she's chosen to use those skills in our mutual interest rather than against me. That's a lesson worth learning, Victor. Partnership beats possession. He left Victor sitting alone in the booth, nursing his vodka and his defeat. Marcus materialized from a doorway as Damien exited the lounge, falling into step beside him. Mrs. Rivas monitored the entire conversation, Marcus reported quietly. She says to tell you it went exactly as predicted. Victor will comply because he has no other choice. And his associates on this floor? Damien asked. 2 left their rooms during your meeting, positioned themselves in the hallway outside the lounge. The 3rd stayed in his room but was on his phone the entire time. My people intercepted encrypted communications going to Moscow. Victor was reporting to someone higher up, getting real-time instructions. So the Bratva leadership had been listening, confirming Damien's suspicion that Victor wasn't acting entirely independently. That made his defeat even more significant. Not just a personal failure, but an organizational one. They took the elevator to Elena's suite. She opened the door before Damien could knock, her tablet still in hand showing frozen security footage of the Sapphire Lounge. Well? She asked, though her expression suggested she already knew the outcome. He accepted the terms, Damien confirmed, entering the suite and sinking into an armchair. The adrenaline that had sustained him through the confrontation was draining away, leaving exhaustion in its wake. 1 week to withdraw from the Port District. He knows he's beaten. Elena set down the tablet and moved to the room's small bar, pouring coffee rather than alcohol. He'll comply. His conversation with Moscow during your meeting was interesting. His uncle wasn't pleased. You intercepted that? Damien asked, impressed despite himself. I have access to the hotel's cellular repeater, Elena said, handing him coffee. Any unencrypted calls can be monitored. Victor's was encrypted, but the metadata alone told the story. 3-minute call to a Moscow number known to belong to Mikhail Korsakov, timed exactly when you delivered your ultimatum. Victor was asking for permission to accept your terms. She settled into the chair across from him. Which means Moscow knows the operation failed. They'll be evaluating whether Victor is still useful to them or whether he's become a liability. The next few days will determine his future with the organization. You almost sound sympathetic, Damien observed. I'm analytical, Elena corrected. Victor made strategic errors, but he was also caught between organizational pressure and local realities. His uncle pushed him to expand, but didn't give him adequate resources or intelligence to do it successfully. Now Victor pays the price for following bad orders. She sipped her own coffee thoughtfully. It's a reminder that even in our world, mid-level operators get sacrificed when leadership makes mistakes, something to remember as we build our own organization. Speaking of which, Damien said, we should discuss next steps. Victor withdrawing from the port district creates an opportunity. Other families will notice the vacuum, might try to fill it. We need to move quickly to consolidate control. Elena pulled up files on her tablet. I've been thinking about that. The port has always been divided among multiple families. What if instead of trying to dominate it entirely, we build a cooperative structure? Bring in Antonio Moretti, maybe the Chen family. Create a shared governance model that gives everyone stake and stability. You want to share power? Damien asked, surprised. I want to build sustainability, Elena said. The old model of single-family dominance creates exactly what just happened with Victor. Ambitious rivals looking for opportunities to take territory, but a cooperative structure where multiple families profit creates mutual incentive to maintain order. She pulled up organizational charts. You control security and infrastructure. Moretti handles logistics and labor. The Chens manage international shipping connections. Everyone profits. Everyone has reason to protect the arrangement. Everyone has too much to lose by disrupting it. It was innovative, completely contrary to the traditional commission approach of dividing territory into exclusive domains, but Damien could see the logic. The other families would have to agree, he said, and trust that we're not maneuvering to betray them later. Which is why we document everything, Elena said. Formal agreements, transparent accounting, regular meetings to review operations. We make it more profitable to cooperate than to compete. Your father would have loved this approach, Damien said, building power through alliance rather than conquest. My father understood that empires built on force alone eventually collapse, Elena said. You need economic incentives, social bonds, mutual interest. The Roman Empire lasted centuries, not because of its legions, but because it made cooperation more profitable than resistance. They spent the next hours refining the proposal, building frameworks for approaching the other families, anticipating objections and counteroffers. It was complex work, requiring detailed knowledge of commission politics, family dynamics, individual leaders' priorities. By the time dawn fully broke over the city, they had the skeleton of a plan that could reshape the port district's power structure entirely. We present this at the next commission meeting, Elena suggested. Frame it as response to Victor's withdrawal, an opportunity for collaborative growth. Let them see the profit potential before they consider the political implications. And if they reject it, Damien asked, then we proceed with traditional consolidation, Elena said. Take direct control, enforce it through strength. But I think they'll see the value. These men aren't stupid. They understand that the old ways are creating increasingly unsustainable conflicts. A knock on the door interrupted them. Marcus entered at Elena's acknowledgement, his expression grim. We have a situation, he said without preamble. Someone set fire to 3 of your warehouses, the ones in the port district covered by Victor's agreements. Emergency services are responding, but the damage looks extensive. Damien's hands clenched into fists. Victor. Maybe, Marcus said, or someone else who saw an opportunity in the chaos. The fires were set simultaneously, professionally. Arson investigators are already calling it coordinated. How bad? Elena asked, her voice steady despite the implications. 2 warehouses are total losses. The 3rd might be salvageable. Initial estimates put the damage at $15 million, not counting lost inventory or business interruption. $15 million. It was a significant hit, but not catastrophic. Damien had insurance, reserves, other revenue streams. But the message was clear. Someone was escalating, turning business conflict into direct violence. Check Victor's whereabouts, Damien ordered. I want to know exactly where he was when the fires started. And pull security footage from the port district. Someone had to scout those locations, plan the timing. Already on it, Marcus confirmed. But, sir, there's something else. One of the warehouses that burned, it's the one containing Elena's father's archived files, documents from his time running the commission, historical records, personal papers. All gone. Elena's face went pale. The archives? Those were supposed to be in climate-controlled storage, protected. They were, Marcus said, which is why the fire there burned hottest. Someone made sure that building wouldn't just burn. They wanted it destroyed completely. No salvage, no recovery. Damien watched his wife process the loss, saw the grief and anger warring in her expression. Those archives had been her inheritance from her father, the last pieces of his empire, and now they were ash. This wasn't about money, Elena said quietly. This was about hurting me specifically. Someone knew what was in that warehouse, knew it would matter to me personally. Victor didn't know about the archives, Damien said. I never told him, and you wouldn't have. So either he has better intelligence than we thought, or someone else is involved. Or Natasha told him before she reported the mission's failure, Elena suggested. She had access to significant information about us. She could have shared details about the warehouses, about what they contained. It made sense. Natasha would have gathered comprehensive intelligence as part of her mission. She might have shared some of that with Victor before being compromised, giving him targets that would cause maximum damage. So what do we do? Marcus asked, looking between them. Victor violated your agreement before it even properly started. That's grounds for taking this to the Commission for open retaliation, which is probably what he wants, Elena said thoughtfully. Force us into public conflict, create chaos that obscures his withdrawal and makes him look like the victim defending his interests. If we retaliate directly, we play into his strategy. But we can't let this stand, Damien said. Firebombing warehouses crosses every line. The Commission won't tolerate that kind of violence without response. Elena stood, moving to the window. Then we respond, but strategically. We document the damage, present evidence to the Commission, let them handle Victor through official channels. We take the moral high ground, show that we're willing to work within the system rather than outside it. That makes us look weak, Damien objected. It makes us look civilized, Elena corrected, and it puts Victor in an impossible position. If he admits responsibility, he faces Commission sanctions. If he denies it, we have evidence suggesting otherwise, and he loses credibility. Either way, he ends up worse than before. She turned to face them both. But we also quietly ensure that Victor's remaining operations face difficulties. Not violence, economic pressure. His suppliers get better offers elsewhere. His clients find more reliable partners. His cash flow gets constrained through legitimate business competition. We make continuing to operate here increasingly expensive without ever crossing the line into open conflict. It was elegant, brutal in its own way, but elegant. Death by 1,000 cuts rather than one dramatic blow. I'll need resources to coordinate that kind of economic warfare, Damien said. Contacts, leverage, time. You have them, Elena assured him, and you have me. This is exactly the kind of campaign my father excelled at. I know how to build those pressures, how to make someone's empire crumble without them understanding why until it's too late. Marcus's phone buzzed. He checked it, his expression darkening further. Victor just checked out of the hotel, left in a convoy, heading toward the airport. His associates are packing up as well. Running, Elena said. He struck the warehouses and now he's fleeing before we can respond. That's confirmation of guilt right there. Should I have him stopped? Marcus asked. We could detain him, bring him before the Commission. Let him go, Elena decided. His running is its own kind of confession. The Commission will see it that way, and it means he's withdrawing from the city entirely, which solves one of our immediate problems. But the warehouse fires, Damien began, are a problem we address through proper channels, Elena interrupted gently. I know you want direct retaliation, Damien. Your instinct is to strike back immediately, to demonstrate strength through action. But sometimes the stronger move is patience. Let Victor run. Let the Commission investigate. Let the Bratva see how thoroughly he failed, not just in the assassination plot, but in the aftermath, burning warehouses like a common arsonist and then fleeing like a coward. She was right. Damien hated admitting it, hated the way his entire approach had to change because his wife thought differently than he did. But she was right. Fine, he said. We document everything. Present it to the Commission. Apply economic pressure quietly. Make Victor's failure complete in public. And in the meantime, Elena added, we move forward with the Port District Cooperative proposal. Show the Commission that while Victor created chaos, we're building stability. Contrast our approach with his, make the choice between cooperation and conflict as clear as possible. It was a comprehensive strategy, one that played to their combined strengths. Damien's reputation for decisive action balanced against Elena's preference for systematic pressure. Public demonstration of working within commission structures alongside private economic warfare that would destroy Victor's remaining operations. Partnership in action. The next week unfolded exactly as Elena predicted. Victor's departure was noted by every family in the commission. The warehouse fires were investigated, evidence pointing clearly to professional arson but stopping short of provable connection to Victor personally. The commission condemned the violence, issued warnings about retaliation, and privately let Damien know that if he chose to respond, they would look the other way. But Damien and Elena took the high road, presenting themselves as victims seeking justice through proper channels rather than vigilantes pursuing vendetta. The Port District Cooperative proposal was received with cautious interest. Antonio Moretti saw the potential immediately, recognizing that shared governance meant shared profit without the risk of total loss if things went wrong. The Chen family agreed after negotiating favorable terms for their shipping operations. Within 2 weeks, they had the framework of an agreement that would transform the port from contested territory into collaborative enterprise. And quietly, methodically, Elena's economic warfare campaign began strangling Victor's remaining operations. Suppliers who'd worked with the Korsakov family for years suddenly found better opportunities elsewhere. Clients discovered that Victor's services were less reliable than alternatives. Credit lines that had been solid for decades began tightening as banks received information about increased risk factors. Nothing illegal, nothing that could be traced back to the Rivas family directly. Just business decisions by independent actors who all somehow reached the same conclusion at the same time. Viktor Korsakov's empire was dying, and he didn't understand why until it was too late to stop the bleeding. Natasha's report to Moscow had the intended effect. Mikhail Korsakov recalled his nephew for consultation, which everyone in their world understood meant demotion or worse. The Bratva's American expansion paused, reconsidering strategies and leadership. And through it all, Elena's pregnancy progressed. She continued working despite her doctor's advice to rest, coordinating strategies, building alliances, managing the complex web of relationships that kept their empire functioning. Until one morning, 6 weeks after the gala, she went into labor. Early. Too early. And everything changed again. The pain started during a commission meeting at Antonio Moretti's estate, 8 weeks before Elena's due date. She'd been presenting the final details of the Port District Cooperative Agreement when she felt the first contraction, sharp and unmistakable, stealing her breath mid-sentence. Damien saw it immediately, the way her hand gripped the edge of the conference table, the sudden pallor of her skin, the brief flash of fear in her eyes before her composure reasserted itself. "Gentlemen," he said, cutting off Antonio's question about revenue distribution percentages, "we need to pause this discussion. My wife requires immediate medical attention." Elena started to protest, to insist she could continue, but another contraction hit harder than the first. Her water broke, soaking through her dress and pooling on Moretti's expensive carpet. The room erupted into controlled chaos. Antonio's wife materialized with towels and calm instructions. Marcus was already on the phone coordinating with their private medical team. The other family heads cleared the room efficiently, understanding that some things transcended business. "The hospital is 20 minutes away," Marcus reported, his voice tight with concern. "But traffic—" "We won't make it," Elena gasped, her medical training from years of studying her father's organization kicking in. "The contractions are too close. 3 minutes apart. This baby is coming now." Damien felt ice flood his veins. "Here? You're saying she's going to be born here?" "Unless you want to risk delivering her in a car stuck in traffic," Elena said, trying to maintain her analytical calm, even as another contraction doubled her over. "Antonio, do you have a first-floor room we can use? Preferably one with privacy and good lighting?" Antonio's wife, Isabella, took charge with the competence of a woman who'd raised 6 children and managed countless crises. "The sitting room off the library. It's quiet, clean, and I can have fresh linens brought immediately. Damien, you'll need to help her walk." The next minutes blurred into surreal fragments. Damien supporting Elena as they moved through Moretti's mansion, her grip on his arm becoming painful as contractions intensified. Isabella directing staff with crisp efficiency, transforming a sitting room into an improvised delivery space. Marcus coordinating with their doctor who was racing through traffic but wouldn't arrive in time. And Elena, his brilliant calculating wife, growing increasingly vulnerable with each passing moment. "I'm scared," she whispered as Isabella helped her onto the makeshift bed. "Damien, she's too early. 8 weeks too early. The survival rates—" "Don't," he interrupted, kneeling beside her and taking her hand. "Don't start calculating odds. Just focus on right now, on what you need to do." "I need you to stay," Elena said, her eyes meeting his with desperate intensity. "I know this isn't what you signed up for. I know our marriage is a partnership, not a romance. But please, don't leave me alone for this." The request hit him harder than expected. In all their careful negotiations about boundaries and independence, neither of them had considered this moment. The raw human need for someone familiar, someone trusted, when facing the terrifying unknown. "I'm not going anywhere," Damien promised. "We're partners, remember? That means being here for the hard parts, too." Isabella appeared with hot water and clean towels, her expression serious but not panicked. "I've delivered 3 of my own children without doctors. I can guide you through this if the medical team doesn't arrive in time. But Elena, you need to tell me honestly. How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Elena admitted, "but functional. The contractions are manageable. I can do this." Over the next hour, Damien discovered depths of strength in his wife he'd never imagined. She worked through each contraction with focused determination, breathing techniques learned from prenatal classes she'd attended alone, mental discipline inherited from her father's training in maintaining composure under pressure. Their doctor arrived 45 minutes into labor, bringing proper medical equipment and expertise. But by then, the process was too far advanced to risk moving Elena to a hospital. "You're doing beautifully," Dr. Chen said, a woman in her 60s who'd delivered babies for 3 generations of commission families. "But I need to be honest with you both. At 32 weeks, this baby will be premature. She'll likely need immediate NICU care. I have a neonatal team standing by at the hospital, ready to transport her the moment she's stable enough." "How dangerous is this?" Damien asked, the question emerging rougher than intended. Dr. Chen met his eyes steadily. 32 weeks gives us good odds. Not perfect, but good. Survival rates above 95% with proper care. But she'll be small, underdeveloped. She'll need time in the NICU to grow and strengthen before she can come home." Elena's hand tightened in Damien's. "But she'll survive? She has a real chance?" "She has an excellent chance," Dr. Chen confirmed. "You've taken good care of yourself throughout this pregnancy. That matters. Now we just need to get her safely into the world and into specialized care." The next phase of labor was brutal. Elena's strength, so apparent in everything she did, was tested in ways Damien had never witnessed. She screamed during contractions, cried between them, gripped his hand hard enough to leave bruises. The controlled, strategic woman who'd outmaneuvered Russian intelligence operatives became raw and human and terrifyingly vulnerable. And Damien stayed, held her hand, whispered encouragement, became the anchor she needed because, despite everything complicated between them, she was his wife, and this was his daughter fighting to be born. "One more push," Dr. Chen instructed. "Elena, you're almost there. One more." Elena gathered herself, drawing on reserves Damien didn't know existed, and pushed with everything she had left. Their daughter entered the world silent. For 3 terrible seconds, there was no sound, no cry, no indication of life. Then Dr. Chen's skilled hands worked quickly, clearing airways, stimulating response. And finally, blessedly, a thin wail emerged from the tiny form. "She's breathing," Dr. Chen announced. "Small but breathing. 3 pounds, 4 ounces. Small even for 32 weeks, but she's fighting." Damien caught only a glimpse of his daughter before the neonatal team swept her into action, impossibly small, red, and fragile, barely bigger than his hand. They worked with practiced efficiency, assessing, stabilizing, preparing her for immediate transport. "She needs to go to the hospital now," one of the nurses explained. "The NICU is equipped for premature infants. She'll be in good hands." Elena struggled to sit up despite her exhaustion. "I want to see her before she goes. Please." Dr. Chen nodded, and the team brought the baby closer, Already swaddled and connected to portable monitoring equipment, Elena reached out with trembling hands, touching her daughter's impossibly tiny fingers. "Sophia," Elena whispered. "We'll call her Sophia, like my grandmother." She was small too, but fierce, a survivor. "Sophia Rivas," Damien repeated, testing the name. Looking at his daughter, so fragile, so vulnerable, fighting for every breath, he felt something shift fundamentally inside him. This wasn't theoretical anymore. This wasn't a strategic error or a business consideration. This was a person. His person. Depending on him and Elena to protect her. "Go with her," Elena said, still looking at Sophia. "Damien, go with them to the hospital. Don't let her be alone." "I'm not leaving you," Damien protested. "I'll be fine here," Elena insisted. "Isabella and Dr. Chen will take care of me. But Sophia needs family with her. She needs to know someone is there. Please." It went against every instinct to leave Elena when she'd just been through trauma, when she was still pale and exhausted and recovering. But looking at his wife's face, seeing the desperate need there, he understood what she was really asking. She needed to know their daughter wouldn't face the world alone, even for those first hours, even when she was too small to understand. "I'll stay with her every minute," Damien promised. "I'll call you with updates constantly, and the moment you're cleared to travel, we'll bring you to the hospital." Elena nodded, tears streaming down her face. Tell her we love her. Tell her we're fighting for her." The transport team was gentle but urgent, moving Sophia into a specialized incubator for the ambulance ride. Damien rode with them, watching monitors he didn't fully understand, listening to medical jargon about oxygen saturation and respiratory support. At the hospital, the NICU was both intimidating and reassuring. Glass-walled rooms full of tiny babies connected to sophisticated equipment, staffed by specialists who moved with calm competence. Sophia was settled into her assigned space, a small clear box that would be her world for the foreseeable future. "You can touch her," one of the nurses told Damien. "Through the ports. Skin contact is important for premature babies. They respond to their parents' touch." Damien carefully inserted his hands through the incubator's access ports, his fingers looking enormous next to his daughter's tiny body. When he gently rested his palm against her chest, she seemed to settle slightly, her rapid breathing becoming marginally more regular. "She knows you're here," the nurse said softly. "Keep talking to her. They can hear us, even this small." So Damien talked, told Sophia about her mother's strength, about how much she was loved already, about the world waiting for her when she was ready. He told her about her grandfather Castellano, who would have been proud to have such a fierce granddaughter. He told her about the empire she would inherit, the opportunities she would have, the future they would build for her. He called Elena every 30 minutes with updates. Her voice grew stronger with each call, her medical team having stabilized her enough that she was insisting on being transported to the hospital against Dr. Chen's recommendations. "I'm coming," Elena said during their fourth call. "Dr. Chen can supervise me there as easily as here. I need to see her, Damien. I need to be with both of you." She arrived 2 hours later, wheeled into the NICU in a wheelchair, despite her protests that she could walk. The moment she saw Sophia in the incubator, she began crying again, not from despair but from overwhelming emotion at finally seeing their daughter with her own eyes. "She's so small," Elena whispered, "but she's breathing on her own. That's good, right? The fact that she's breathing without a ventilator?" "It's excellent," their attending neonatologist confirmed. "Better than we expected at her gestational age. She's showing strong vital signs, good color, appropriate responses. These first 72 hours are critical, but everything we're seeing is encouraging." Over the next days, Damien and Elena established a routine unlike anything their partnership had contemplated. They took shifts at Sophia's bedside, one always present while the other handled the business that couldn't be entirely abandoned. They learned the NICU rhythms, feeding schedules, kangaroo care sessions where they could hold Sophia against their skin, quiet moments reading to her even though she was too young to understand the words. The commission was remarkably understanding. Antonio Moretti visited personally, bringing a donation to the hospital's neonatal unit substantial enough to have a wing named after him. Other families sent gifts, cards, offers of support. Even rivals respected the sanctity of family crisis. But not everyone was so gracious. On Sophia's 5th day of life, Marcus appeared in the NICU waiting room with grim news. "We have a situation. Viktor Korsakov is back in the city. He was spotted at the airport this morning with a small team. My sources say he's making moves to reclaim territory, calling in favors, positioning himself for some kind of play. Damien felt rage rising. He's trying to take advantage while we're distracted. While our daughter fights for her life, he's circling like a vulture. It's worse than that, Marcus continued. I've received intelligence that he's planning to present evidence to the commission. Claims that you orchestrated the warehouse fires yourself, that the whole Natasha situation was a setup to discredit him. He's got documents, testimony from people who say they can prove your involvement. That's insane, Damien said. We have proof of his conspiracy. Proof that shows your wife has extensive surveillance capabilities and intelligence networks. Marcus interrupted gently. Victor's strategy is to make the commission question how Elena obtained her evidence. Make them see her as the real threat, someone operating outside all established protocols. If he succeeds, he turns your strength into liability. Elena had been listening from her position in the NICU, visible through the glass where she sat beside Sophia's incubator. Now she stood, moving to join them with the careful steps of someone still recovering from childbirth. He's trying to destroy us while we're vulnerable, she said, her voice steady despite obvious exhaustion. It's actually a smart strategy. Attack when the enemy is weakest, when they can't mount an effective defense. So what do we do? Damien asked. I'm not leaving Sophia. Not now. Not when she's still so fragile. Neither am I, Elena agreed. Which means we handle this differently than we've handled everything else. She looked at Marcus. When is Victor planning to present his case to the commission? Emergency session called for tomorrow night, Marcus reported. He's claiming urgent security concerns that require immediate action. Then we need to be there, Elena said. Both of us. We present our case, defend ourselves, settle this once and for all. Elena, you just gave birth 5 days ago, Damien protested. You should be recovering, not preparing for commission warfare. I should be protecting my daughter's future, Elena corrected. Because if Victor succeeds in destroying our credibility, if he takes our territory and our standing, what kind of world does Sophia inherit? We fight now so she doesn't have to fight later. She was right. Damien hated it, hated that they couldn't just focus on their daughter's health, but Elena was absolutely right. We'll need a comprehensive presentation, Damien said, shifting into strategic mode. Every piece of evidence about the assassination plot, the warehouse fires, Victor's Bratva connections, everything documented, verified, impossible to refute. I have it, Elena said. I've been preparing for this possibility since the gala. Every communication, every transaction, every movement Victor's made, it's all compiled, cross-referenced, ready to present. Of course you have, Damien said, with something almost like affection. You're always 3 moves ahead. I learned from the best, Elena said. My father taught me to prepare for every contingency, even the unlikely ones. They spent the next 24 hours in intense preparation, working from a private room the hospital provided. Elena coordinated intelligence gathering while still managing regular visits to Sophia's bedside. Damien worked his network of allies, ensuring they would have support when the presentation happened. Marcus coordinated security, aware that Victor might try something desperate if he felt cornered. The commission session was scheduled for 8 o'clock at Neutral Territory, a private club that had hosted such meetings for decades. Damien and Elena arrived together, presenting a united front despite Elena's obvious physical exhaustion. She dressed carefully in a dark suit that projected authority while accommodating her post-pregnancy body, her hair pulled back severely, her expression composed and professional. The other family heads were already assembled when they entered. Antonio Moretti, the Chen family matriarch, representatives from the founding families, and various key associates. Victor sat at one end of the long conference table, flanked by his lawyers and supporters, looking confident and composed. Thank you all for coming, Antonio said, taking his position as commission chairman. We have serious allegations to address tonight. Victor, you requested this emergency session. Present your case. Victor stood, commanding the room with practiced ease. Members of the commission, I come before you tonight to expose a dangerous conspiracy, one that threatens the very foundations of how we conduct business, how we trust each other, how we maintain the order that keeps our world functioning. He activated a presentation screen displaying documents and photographs. 6 weeks ago, Damien Rivas accused me of plotting his assassination. He presented what appeared to be comprehensive evidence, surveillance, communications, financial records, evidence that destroyed my reputation and forced me to withdraw from legitimate business operations. Victor paused for effect. But I've since discovered the truth. That evidence was fabricated. The surveillance was illegal. The communications were obtained through methods that violate every privacy agreement the Commission has established. And the person behind it all is Elena Rivas, a woman who has built a shadow intelligence network without Commission knowledge or approval. The room stirred with murmurs. Victor pressed his advantage. Furthermore, I have evidence that the warehouse fires attributed to me were actually orchestrated by Damien himself. Insurance fraud designed to collect payouts while framing me for arson. I have testimony from individuals who can place Rivas associates at all 3 locations before the fires started. He turned to face Damien and Elena directly. The Commission deserves to know the truth. Damien and Elena Rivas are operating outside all established rules. They're using illegal surveillance, fabricating evidence, destroying property, and doing it all while hiding behind claims of victimization. They're the real threat to Commission stability. The presentation was effective, Damien had to admit. Victor had built a narrative that would resonate with families who valued privacy and established protocols. The suggestion that Elena had created an unauthorized intelligence network would particularly concern the older, more traditional members. Antonio looked to Damien. You have the right to respond. What do you say to these allegations? Damien stood, but it was Elena who spoke first. May I address the Commission? She asked, her voice carrying clearly despite her fatigue. Antonio hesitated, then nodded. Wives didn't typically speak at Commission sessions, but circumstances were unusual enough to warrant exception. Elena stood, moving to the presentation screen. Victor's strategy is clever. Attack the methods rather than address the substance. Make you question how we know what we know rather than confront what we actually discovered. It's a classic misdirection technique. She pulled up her own presentation, displaying the surveillance photos of Natasha they'd shown Victor weeks ago. This is Natasha Volkov, who Victor introduced as his cousin, but here she is meeting with known Bratva operatives. Here are financial transfers from Moscow to support her operation. Here are communications in which she explicitly discusses plans to poison Damien Rivas. More images appeared. This intelligence was gathered through methods that, yes, push boundaries of traditional Commission protocols. But they were necessary because Victor brought a foreign intelligence operative into our city with murderous intent. I make no apology for protecting my husband's life through whatever means were necessary. She pulled up additional documentation. As for the warehouse fires, we have security footage showing Victor's known associates conducting surveillance of those properties in the days before the fires. We have financial records of payments made to professional arsonists immediately before the incidents. We have communications between Victor and his team discussing sending a message about territory. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she navigated the presentation, but her voice remained steady. Victor wants you to focus on whether I had the right to gather intelligence. I want you to focus on why such intelligence was necessary. Because a Commission member brought a foreign assassin into our territory, plotted murder, and when that plot failed, responded with arson and violence. She turned to face the room directly. Yes, I built intelligence capabilities. My father taught me that information is power, and in our world, being powerless means being dead. I use those capabilities to protect my family. If that makes me dangerous to people who plot murder, then I accept that designation proudly. Victor stood abruptly. This is exactly my point. She operates outside all rules, answers to no authority, builds shadow networks without oversight. How can we trust someone like that? How can we allow it to continue? Because without her capabilities, Damien would be dead, Antonio said quietly. And we'd be dealing with a Bratva takeover attempt that we didn't see coming. Elena's intelligence prevented a crisis, Victor. That's not a threat, that's an asset. An asset we can't control, one of the older family heads objected. An asset that knows things about all of us, probably. How do we know she's not spying on everyone here? Elena met the speaker's eyes directly. Because my loyalty is to my family first and the Commission second. I have no interest in anyone's business unless it threatens mine. But I won't apologize for being capable, for being prepared, for refusing to be the decorative, helpless wife this world expected me to be. The room was silent for a moment. Then Antonio spoke again. Victor, you've presented allegations of insurance fraud. Where's your proof? Not testimony from unidentified sources, actual evidence linking the Rivases to the fires. Victor hesitated. My sources need protection. If I reveal their identities, then we can't verify their credibility, Antonio interrupted. Elena presented specific, verifiable evidence about the assassination plot. You're asking us to trust anonymous sources. That's not equivalent. Another family head spoke up. I'm more concerned about the larger issue. Victor, you brought a foreign operative into our city without commission notification. That's a serious violation of territorial protocols. Whether she was actually planning assassination or not, you introduced an unauthorized intelligence presence. She was my cousin, Victor insisted. I had no idea. You're ex-KGB, Victor, Antonio said flatly. You expect us to believe you didn't know your own cousin was Bratva intelligence? Please. The tide was turning. Damien could feel it, could see the other family heads reassessing their positions based on evidence and logic rather than Victor's narrative. But Victor had one more card to play. Fine, he said coldly. You want to support the Rivases? Support a woman who operates in shadows? Then let me ask this. Where did all her intelligence come from? Her surveillance, her intercepts, her comprehensive documentation of my activities? Someone had to be feeding her information. Someone inside my organization. Someone she compromised. He turned to Elena. Who's your source, Elena? Who betrayed my organization to give you all this intelligence? Because the commission should know if you're cultivating informants inside member families. That's as serious a violation as anything you've accused me of. It was a clever trap. If Elena revealed sources, she'd be admitting to actively undermining other families. If she refused, Victor could claim she was hiding more extensive infiltration. Elena smiled slightly. You're assuming I needed internal sources, Victor. You're assuming someone betrayed you. But the truth is simpler. You were sloppy. You conducted sensitive communications on channels that weren't as secure as you thought. You met with operatives in locations that had existing surveillance. You left digital footprints that someone with the right skills could follow. She pulled up technical documentation. Everything I gathered came from exploiting your operational security failures. No informants, no infiltrators. Just competent intelligence work against a target who underestimated the opposition. It was a masterful deflection. Whether entirely true or not, it gave the commission a palatable explanation that didn't require acknowledging internal betrayals. Victor's face reddened. You expect them to believe that? That you single-handedly compromised my entire operation without inside help? I expect them to believe I'm good at what I do, Elena said simply, which I've just demonstrated by presenting comprehensive, verifiable evidence while you've offered nothing but allegations and anonymous sources. Antonio called for a vote. All in favor of accepting Victor's claims against the Rivases and pursuing official sanctions. 2 hands raised, both from families with long-standing ties to the Korsakovs. All in favor of dismissing Victor's claims as unsubstantiated and reaffirming Damien Rivas's standing in the commission. 7 hands, including Antonio's. The commission has spoken, Antonio declared. Victor, your allegations are dismissed. Furthermore, you are formally censured for bringing a foreign intelligence operative into our territory without notification. You will pay restitution to the Rivas family for the warehouse damages, $15 million within 30 days. This is outrageous, Victor protested. You're letting them get away with, we're recognizing reality, Antonio interrupted, which is that you tried to have a commission member killed, failed, and are now trying to salvage your reputation through baseless accusations. It's not working, Victor. Accept your losses and move on. The session concluded shortly after. Family heads filed out, some stopping to congratulate Damien and Elena, others maintaining careful neutrality. Victor left with his supporters, his expression promising that this wasn't over. But it was. Elena had won by doing exactly what she did best, presenting irrefutable evidence, controlling the narrative, and making opposition look incompetent by comparison. Damien found her in the hallway afterward, leaning against the wall with her eyes closed, exhaustion finally showing. You need to sit down, he said gently, guiding her to a nearby chair. You just went through childbirth and commission warfare in the same week. Even you have limits. I need to get back to Sofia, Elena said. We've been away for 3 hours. I need to see her. They returned to the hospital to find Sofia's medical team cautiously optimistic. She'd gained 2 ounces, her breathing was stabilizing, her vital signs continuing to improve. The neonatologist explained that if progress continued, Sophia might be ready to go home in 6 to 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks of incubators and monitors and fragile hope. But hope nonetheless. Over the following weeks, life found new rhythms. Damien and Elena divided their time between the hospital and managing their empire. The Port District Cooperative Agreement was finalized, bringing unprecedented stability to what had been contentious territory. Victor's forced restitution payment arrived exactly on time, routed directly into Sophia's trust fund, and gradually, impossibly, their daughter grew stronger. She graduated from the incubator to an open crib, started feeding without assistance, reached the weight thresholds that indicated healthy development. The NICU staff called her their little fighter, marveling at how a baby so small could have such determination. "She gets it from you," Damien told Elena one evening as they sat together watching Sophia sleep. "That stubborn refusal to give up. That's all you." "The fighting spirit is from both of us," Elena corrected. "She's got your strength and my strategy. The combination will be formidable." Damien reached for Elena's hand, a gesture that had become natural over the weeks of shared crisis. "I owe you an apology. For 6 years of marriage where I didn't see you, didn't value you, didn't understand what I had." "You see me now," Elena said simply. "That's what matters. We can't change the past, Damien. We can only build something better going forward." "Is that what you want?" he asked. "To build something better? Not just the business partnership, but everything?" Elena was quiet for a moment, watching their daughter's tiny chest rise and fall with each breath. "I think what we have now is better than what most people get. We respect each other, trust each other, work together effectively. That's more than most marriages built on romantic love ever achieve." "But is it enough?" Damien pressed. "For you? For Sophia?" "It's honest," Elena said. "And in our world, honesty is rare enough to be valuable. We know what we are to each other. We know what we're building together. That clarity is worth more than pretty lies about forever love." She turned to look at him directly. "But if you're asking whether I could imagine this evolving into something more, I think we're already there, Damien. We're already partners in every way that matters. Maybe someday that includes romance. Maybe it doesn't. Either way, we're building something real." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching their daughter prepare to enter the world that they would shape for her. A world where her mother's intelligence was recognized and respected, where partnership mattered more than domination, where a woman could be both strategist and mother, both powerful and vulnerable. 8 weeks after her dramatic early arrival, Sophia Rivas was finally cleared to go home. At 5 pounds 6 ounces, she was still small but healthy, strong, ready to leave the medical environment that had sustained her earliest days. The estate had been transformed during their time at the hospital. Elena had overseen renovations that converted the East Wing into a secure nursery complex, state-of-the-art monitoring, medical equipment on standby, staff trained in premature infant care. Nothing was left to chance. But she'd also added personal touches. Family photographs from both the Castellano and Rivas histories, books from her father's collection, a rocking chair that had belonged to Damien's grandmother. The space was both fortress and home, protecting their daughter while welcoming her into family legacy. The first night home was terrifying and wonderful. Sophia slept in a bassinet beside their bed. They'd agreed without discussion that separate quarters made no sense with an infant who needed constant attention. They took turns checking her breathing, adjusting her blankets, marveling at how something so small could have survived so much. "She's going to rule this city someday," Elena whispered in the darkness. "Not through violence or fear, through intelligence and strategy and the kind of strength that doesn't need to announce itself." "She's going to have a choice," Damien corrected. "We'll teach her everything we know, give her every advantage we can. But whether she chooses this life or something completely different, that's her decision." "Look at you," Elena said with quiet affection. "Damien Rivas, crime boss and philosopher, offering our daughter choices you never thought you'd have." "You changed me," Damien admitted. "Forced me to see that control isn't the same as power. That partnership can be stronger than dominance. That the woman I thought was invisible was actually the most formidable person in my life." He reached across the space between them, finding Elena's hand in the darkness. "I don't know if I can give you the romance you might deserve, the grand gestures and declarations that normal marriages have, but I can give you respect, loyalty, an honest partnership, if that's enough. Elena's fingers intertwined with his. It's more than enough. It's everything that matters. In the weeks and months that followed, their empire continued to evolve. The Port District Cooperative proved remarkably successful, generating profits that exceeded projections while maintaining unprecedented stability. Other families began approaching Damien and Elena about similar arrangements, interested in the model they'd pioneered. Viktor Korsakov disappeared from the city entirely, recalled to Moscow for reassignment that everyone understood meant demotion. Natasha Volkov was reportedly operating in Eastern Europe, her career apparently undamaged by the failed mission. The Bratva withdrew their expansion attempts, recognizing that the Rivas territory was more fortified than they'd anticipated, and Elena's role in the organization became official. The commission formally recognized her as Damien's partner in leadership, an unprecedented acknowledgement that challenged decades of tradition. Some families objected. Others saw it as inevitable evolution, but none could deny the effectiveness of their partnership. Sophia grew from fragile newborn to healthy infant, reaching developmental milestones with the same determination she'd shown fighting for life in the NYCU. She had Elena's dark eyes and Damien's stubborn chin, a combination that promised future headaches for anyone who underestimated her. One evening, 6 months after Sophia's birth, Damien found Elena in what had once been his private study, but was now their shared office. She was reviewing financial projections, while Sophia slept in a carrier beside the desk, already growing accustomed to the sounds of business being conducted. "We need a new estate," Elena said without preamble. "This house has too much history, too many memories of what we were rather than what we're becoming. I want something we choose together, something that's ours, not just yours." Damien considered the suggestion. The estate had been his symbol of achievement, his fortress, his domain. But Elena was right. It represented an old paradigm that no longer fit their reality. "What did you have in mind?" he asked. Elena pulled up property listings she'd already researched, because of course she had. Something modern, secure but not fortified, closer to the city so we're not isolated, with space for Sophia to grow, for her to have normal childhood experiences, along with the unusual ones she'll inevitably have. The properties she'd selected were impressive. Architectural achievements that balanced security with livability, power with comfort. They represented a different vision of what their life could be. "This one," Damien said, pointing to a contemporary estate with extensive grounds and smart integration throughout. "We could make that work. Build something there that's truly ours. Both our names on the deed," Elena said. "Equal ownership. No more your house that I happen to occupy." "Both our names," Damien agreed. "Equal partnership in everything." They sat together reviewing plans and possibilities, occasionally glancing at their daughter sleeping peacefully beside them. Sophia's presence had changed everything, not just their daily routines, but their fundamental understanding of what they were building and why. The old empire had been about power, control, dominance. The new empire they were creating was about sustainability, partnership, legacy worth passing on. 1 year after the night Elena had sat behind Damien's desk holding documents that could destroy him, they moved into their new home. A house chosen together, designed together, representing the partnership they'd built from the ashes of a traditional marriage. The estate that had burned in Damien's past, literally and metaphorically, was sold to another family. The new house stood in its own light, modern and forward-looking, equipped with every security measure but feeling more like a home than a fortress. On their first night there, after Sophia was settled in her nursery and the staff had retired to their quarters, Damien and Elena stood on the balcony overlooking the city they controlled together. "Do you ever regret it?" Damien asked. "That night you revealed everything, changed our entire dynamic? Do you wish you'd stayed invisible, stayed safe?" Elena was quiet for a moment, considering the question seriously. "No," she said finally. "Being invisible wasn't safety. It was slow suffocation. I was dying in silence, building leverage I might never use, preparing for a confrontation that might never come. Speaking up, claiming my place, risking everything for partnership, that was the first time I really lived." She turned to face him. "We could have destroyed each other. Probably should have, by every conventional understanding of power and marriage in our world. But instead we built something better, something our daughter will inherit and hopefully improve upon. She'll be formidable, Damien predicted. With your intelligence and my determination, the world won't know what hit it. She'll be her own person, Elena corrected gently. Better than both of us. Smarter, stronger, more capable of building the kind of empire that lasts not through fear, but through earned respect. From the nursery, they heard Sophia beginning to wake, her soft sounds gradually building toward demands for attention. Elena moved to respond, but Damien stopped her. My turn, he said. You handle strategy. I'll handle the 2 a.m. feeding. Partnership, Elena said with a smile. Partnership, Damien agreed. As he walked toward their daughter's room, Damien reflected on how completely his life had transformed. A year ago, he thought control was his greatest weapon, that dominance, power, and fear were the foundations of empire. But his wife, his partner, his equal, had taught him something different, that real power came from collaboration, that sustainable empire required more than force, that the woman he'd thought was decorative, compliant, invisible, was actually the strongest person he'd ever known. The silent queen had spoken, and in speaking she had transformed not just herself but everything around her. Their empire would endure not because they ruled through fear, but because they led through partnership. Not because they dominated, but because they built alliances. Not because they were perfect, but because they were honest about their strengths and weaknesses. And Sophia would grow up watching this model, learning that power and partnership weren't opposites, but complements. That women could be both strategic and nurturing, both fierce and vulnerable, both powerful and human. The old world had burned. The new one they were building would be better. Not perfect, not without conflict or challenge, but real, honest. Built on partnership rather than possession, and that made all the difference.